Hello.
Hey there. How's it going?
Uh, it's going good. Just slightly just waking up.
Okay. Do you normally sleep in pretty late?
Yeah, I usually sleep in until 12 or past 12, like 1 p.m.
And it's right now what, like 10 or 11 a.m. for you, something like that?
11. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be 10, so I woke up at like 9. And then I was just like, "Oh, it's that's the wrong time."
Okay.
So, yeah. It's not like I just woke up.
Okay.
Like I woke up and took a shower and stuff like that, so
If we ever do this again, I'm willing to wait until later if you want to sleep in a bit.
well, like it's kind of weird because like I also want to hold on a second. I also want to wake up at a decent time so that I can get like keep a normal sleep schedule, you know?
hmm
So like I don't know, it's like a whole thing like right now because like all my days off I'll have like I'll be awake until really late and then I'll wake up really late and then like the first day back at work, like Monday, I'll be working off of like 2 hours of sleep. So it's probably not too great.
hmm why is it
Uh
that you want to keep a normal sleep schedule?
hold on a second. There we go. Um I don't know, it's kind of more like I want to not necessarily keep like a schedule, but more like I want to wake up a little bit earlier on the weekends so that I can stream at a more America friendly time.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I guess like
and
most of
just
your online friends are probably American or Canadian or whatever. Is that right?
yeah, um, some of them are from like the like Europe ish time zone, so like
hmm
those are kind of okay. But like yeah, like the other like last weekend I was talking with Beckett. Do you know Beckett?
I've seen him, but I've never met him
Mm.
before. But yeah, I've seen him on. I think he was on Wick's show, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's been around. He's like super interesting. But like it was me, him, and then it was supposed to be someone from the US. But then Myopic ended up joining us, so like from the US. So like we had like the triumvirate of like all the time zones. It was kind of weird. All right, let's set up stream. All right. Let's see. Nope, that does not work.
Oh yeah, I'm already streaming. So for anybody who doesn't know, this is Solemn 10,
That does
and
not
he's
work.
in Japan. So this is why we have like a little
Hello,
bit of
hello.
scheduling awkwardness.
Yeah. How long have you been streaming? Like, I saw a notification on my phone when I woke up, and it was like, yes, like 11 yesterday, like 12 hours ago. So is this like another stream or
This
the
is my
same
second
stream?
second time today streaming. Yeah,
Damn.
I did I
I'm
did I did a
sorry.
stream this morning. I was talking with Myopic.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah,
Um,
he and I had a disagreement earlier in the week that I wanted to talk with him about on stream. We were talking about like when is it okay
mm-hmm.
to give medical treatments to somebody who's not able to consent?
Ah, that's kind of interesting. All right, I
Yeah.
think I think there we go. All right, we got pro streamer. Totally didn't have to create a whole new scene for this.
Are you on
Right.
OBS or
Yeah.
okay? Do you would you
Like
recommend switching to that? Because I'm not currently using it, but
it really depends. Like OBS has got some interesting uh problems, I guess you could say.
hmm,
Because like there's some computers will like OBS doesn't work with like either the Windows installation or some hardware
hmm,
and it just crashes every now and then. and it's not super great. But like for me, I've had no problems really.
Okay.
Like
I'm on
I mean,
Xstream.
I've not done a whole lot with it. Like my streams are just like super minimal.
Yeah, me too.
Like
I've been meaning to make an overlay for my stream, and I just haven't even bothered yet.
yeah,
I've been.
like yeah. So like it's really like I consider myself somewhat creative, but not from like a tabula rasa stage, you know?
Hmm.
Like not from a blank slate. Like if there's an idea, I
Hmm.
can figure a lot of creative ways to get to that, like to achieve that idea. But like I'm really not good with like coming up with the initial idea.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. Like I
Yeah. So like I'm just like I don't know what I want my stream to look like. But if I did, I could probably get it there pretty decently, you
there's a
know?
lot of pretty good artists around Twitch and Discord. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, one of them
Mm.
could you could talk to one of them and either ask them to do it for you or just ask them for advice or something. But,
My chat just said throw in some anime characters. I was like, that's not a bad idea, but it's also like I'm Japanese, so that's kind of like I don't know if I want to go that route. But
hmm
like
hmm
that's fair, that's fair. Like yeah, like a lot of people do throw in like anime and stuff. So uh yeah, so yeah, Myopic's asking what we're talking about. And we're gonna be talking just chatting, but um I guess the one thing I did want to talk to you about
hmm
was like how we always talk about like joining together, getting together and like working together to achieve certain ideals, right?
hmm
But like we all believe in some different things,
hmm
right? Like let's just say you have your average like neoliberal.
hmm
And your neoliberal maybe doesn't think about like, you know, actual like systemic racism and they're more like the face of racism. We don't like to say the N word, all that stuff, right?
hmm
But like you kind of do have a certain like you are working in the same direction. So like if you bring them on,
hmm
like at a certain point they will be left behind, right?
Yeah, so like if you have common goals and then if you succeed at achieving those goals, then you no longer have your reason for
Yeah.
having
So like let's
allyism.
just
Yeah.
say like a broad not like leftist but like a broad leftist ideology, right? Like if
hmm
you encompass like everyone from like your average progressive to like your soc dems, your socialists, your communists, all those things, right? And
Right,
like
and like
you're moving along to the left, like you move to where the progressives want, and then like to move further, like the progressive will probably want to stay there, right? They're not gonna be like, oh, you helped us achieve our progressive ideal, so we're gonna move over to like push everyone to being socialists, you know?
right.
Like generally speaking, that's not the case. So like
hmm
I guess like talking about it from both sides, like why should you join with someone with a more radical ideology? And why should you include someone with like a much less radical ideology?
I think it's because you may have common instrumental goals that you can help one another to achieve. And well, no, actually, maybe even a better way to answer it would be that we're living in countries that have you know at least semi-democratic systems, right? Where um, where we resolve a lot of questions of political power by voting. And the entire idea of voting is you're supposed to build a coalition, and whoever builds the biggest
Yeah.
coalition wins, right? So the system
Hmm.
kind of requires us to play that game, and then as far as you know, deciding who to ally with, that's kind of more the first answer that I was giving. It's like you ally
Hmm.
with the people that you have instrumental goals in common with, and then you help each other achieve whatever goals you share.
Yeah, and like one thing that I've seen, like I guess a little bit of,
Hmm
was like when certain states were pushing for like legalization of marijuana.
Hmm.
Like it was more of like less of a social push and more of like we're working together for this specific thing.
Right.
And once we achieve this thing, we all go our separate ways. Like nobody
Right.
else is like working together to like achieve like national health care or something like that, you know?
Right. And as long as the as long as you're voting on a referendum or something like that, then it makes sense to have those kind
Yeah.
of like short-term alliances that, issue
Yeah.
specific alliances. But because we live in representative republics, it
Mhm.
kind of requires that you ally to elect a candidate, right? That like
Yeah.
this is the actual mechanism by which we implement our whatever agenda it is that we prefer. We have to ally behind us, either a candidate or a slate of candidates.
Yeah, so like it gets a lot more complicated because like with drug legalization, like you get the vote, it's over with, and
Mhm,
like you go your separate ways. That's all cool. But like when you're building like a social movement or like trying to change the landscape of Congress and
mhm.
things like that, like these things aren't like one vote done and over with. Like this is like a project that you're working towards over multiple elections. So
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. It is.
yeah.
Well, it's like trying to build a durable coalition to achieve a slate of policy outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like in that sense it leans more in the ideology section if that like I don't know what to call it but like you're banding together around a more ideological narrative rather than just like a one vote narrative, right?
Hmm.
And so
Well, I mean,
like
it's
yeah.
either going to be ideological or it's going to be like identitarian, like one or the other of those. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you're gonna have to coalesce around something more than just like let's all vote for this one politician this one time. You know,
If
like
if you want your party to survive the end of that politician's career, then yes. Yeah.
yeah. And so well like like see that's the thing and like Beckett did bring it up when we talked last week in that like we have um we have progressives but
Hmm.
like being progressive is more of a mindset and not of like a certain set of ideals in like the traditional sense, right? Like you don't have like specific policies that you want to push, and then like once you achieve them, like we're done. You know, like once we achieve those, we're gonna move on to the next one. It's more of like progressives is like the pushing force or is trying to move society into like always push for something better and then conservative is like if it ain't broke don't fix it, maybe
Hmm.
let's take it a little bit slower, right?
Sure. Um.
I mean like ideally like we're not talking about like what's actually happening necessarily but like ideally that's or like the original mentality, the the general idea of those ideologies, right?
If I had to reduce them down to just like one
Yeah.
concept, then yeah, I would agree that that's basically what they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like once progressives get like nationalized healthcare and like a more, equal society and all that stuff. Like there's always going to be like the world isn't perfect. There's always going to be something to work on, right?
Sure. There's going to be like somebody's going to still be unhappy with the status quo for some reason, and then there's going to be
Yeah.
somebody pushing to change it. Yeah.
Hmm. And yeah, so like there's not really a set of like you can't be like, oh, we're like if you're trying to convince, let's just say mm, would you say maybe libertarian ish because like those kind of overlap but not really, not a whole lot.
Wait. Sorry. What about libertarians? What are you
Oh
asking?
no, I was just trying to give like give a hypothetical like if like would you say you're a progressive?
I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. Maybe.
Um okay, so I guess yeah, let's back up and like where do you see yourself in the political landscape?
Approximately center left. Yeah. And I say that less on the basis of my ideological beliefs and more on the basis of which candidates I tend to vote for.
Well, like what are the criteria you're judging your politicians on?
The biggest thing is I tend to vote for whoever I think is the least bad and least dangerous, basically. Um,
um
and this is because like I
as a person or as a policymaker?
mostly as a person and then secondarily as a policymaker. Yeah.
So like let's just say in some weird world, Bernie Sanders is Bernie Sanders. Like,
Hmm.
did you vote for Bernie Sanders in the primaries?
No, I did not.
Who did you? Do you mind me asking who you
Yeah, so
voted for?
so in 2020 I voted for Biden in the primaries. The thing is, California votes a little bit late in the primaries, so like realistically,
Mm.
my only option would, for if I wanted to vote for somebody that has any chance of actually winning, it was either
Yeah. I
Biden
mean,
or
like
Sanders.
it doesn't really matter. Like my question would be like if Biden had like Trump policies, but like Biden was still Biden. Like he acted exactly the same way.
Okay, so he has Trump's policies, but not Trump's personality.
Yeah. Would you vote for Biden?
That's a good question. Um, geez, probably not. I'm guessing I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
like it's a weird hypothetical because like someone's personality does tend to like flavor their policies, right?
well, yeah, I mean it definitely flavors their behavior in office, and that
Hmm.
includes their policies, but it also includes lots of other decisions that they're going to make that aren't necessarily like part of their policy agenda. But yeah,
Yeah.
and I think
Uh
the majority of what presidents do is not in the realm of carrying out their policy agenda. I think most of what they do
mhm.
is just like reacting to current events, and then once in a
Yeah,
while
I
they
mean
decide.
like the like ideally the president isn't the one writing up policies, right? But like in the ideal government, like the president is the executive. He's not the one like creating the policy because like that would be kind of a dangerous like not conflict of interest, more of a less like if you're the one carrying it out and you're the one creating the ideas to be carried out, like there's no pushback and like there's no checks and balances,
Hmm.
you know, which is why like I'm very dubious about like things like how the executive orders are being used, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
like nowadays it seems it's mostly to like bypass Congress, which in some cases is okay. Like if it's like something kind of trivial, I think it's okay. Or if it's something that's like a pressing matter, like you cannot wait, then like I imagine the cannot wait is the reasoning behind like giving the executive orders, and they were like relying on good faith presidents to like not abuse it, which doesn't really seem to be the case, but.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason why that stuff's happening is because people in the U.S. perceive Congress as being so dysfunctional and gridlocked that
Mhm.
they're not able to pass a lot of the legislation that.
Would you agree to maybe a constitutional amendment to where Congress must act on something?
Where Congress must act on something.
Yeah, so
So
like you can't have something brought up to Congress and that like it doesn't get voted on for like ages. Like maybe give it like a 30-day, like if it when it's registered as being brought to Congress, it
uh,
must be voted on within like 30 days or 60 days or something.
I'm trying to think of like how prone to abuse is that? Like would if you create a requirement that they have to vote on every legislation that's brought up to them, it makes me wonder if somebody could like purposely just be bringing bill after bill after bill after bill just to like waste their time or something.
Well, like everything has to be brought through the House first, right? So like if the
Yeah.
House is willing to be like voting every day for a new bill, then like I guess that why not?
Okay, so you're talking about like only the Senate would be subject to this, and it would only be for bills that were already passed by the House. Is that the
Well,
idea?
yeah, cuz like it seems to me at least that the House generally speaking acts on like the House is where the bills are created, right?
So the bills can be created by literally anybody. Like a lot of time, like they have to be introduced to the House by a
Yeah,
House
yeah,
member,
yeah.
but they could be written by literally anyone.
Oh yeah. But like basically, things are like the policy is created in the House. It's brought to the Senate, and the Senate says yes or no, or change this, change that, and then like the House votes again, and then the Senate votes again, right? Like, is that general like broadly speaking the flow of things?
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? It
So
was.
like a bill is like when I say a bill is created, I mean
Mhm.
like something is like something's written up and brought to the house, right? Like at that point it's just something someone wrote, right?
Yeah. hmm
And then once the house votes on it, then it becomes like I guess in a sense the will of the people, right?
In a
In
very
a sense, in a sense,
indirect
because
sense.
we're working in a representative democracy.
I,
Like
I
I can't say and everything that Congress votes yes on is the will of like everyone wants this. Like it's not
right.
when I say the will of the people, I mean like in government.
It's at least like an approximation of
Well,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I mean like
Sure.
ideally it should be, right?
Okay.
Like it should be the case that representatives vote the way that their constituencies want, right? Ideally.
I
In
I'm not
in
I'm
a
not even sure.
theoretical
I'm not
world.
even sure if that is ideal. I mean, I guess ideally, according to the voters, they're going to try to choose representatives who
Well,
vote
I
in
mean,
a.
like the whole point of representative democracy is that so that like every citizen doesn't have to vote every single time something comes up. Like they vote for someone, and that someone represents their interest to Congress. Now,
Um, sorry, I was typing in chat and I like, I like, I lost track of what you were saying for a second. I was like, yeah, but you were saying something about why like why it doesn't match to the will of the people, or is that right?
well, no, I'm saying like the theory behind representative democracy is that the people will choose a representative that represents like the majority of what the people in that area want, right?
Ideally, yes, but it really like it doesn't. I don't think that you can necessarily say that that's true on an issue but by issue basis.
Yeah, like no politician is going to perfectly encapsulate like everything that everyone wants, right? Like
Yeah, and I don't even think they should try to do that.
yeah, and but like basically when someone's picked as a representative, I like ideally they're picked because like maybe because they generally speaking do, right? Like this is why I have kind of an issue with like single issue voters
hmm
because like everything might be different, like their whole beliefs about everything else might be different except this one issue, but because that you agree on this one issue you voted for that person.
Right,
So
right,
like,
right. And I think that that's
yeah.
like particularly like in the United States, you see that a lot with Republicans. There's a lot of like
Hmm.
abortion single issue voters, for example.
Yeah, because like I don't know how it is when things shifted over to a more like Trumpian Republican Party. But like,
Pretty much in 2016 is when that happened.
yeah, no, but like I say like I looked into it before, and like the Republican Party, like if you just look at it as a whole, it seems very like hypocritical. Because like you get like your anti-abortionists who are like Republicans, but then you
Hmm.
also have Republicans who are Republicans because some other Republicans want like smaller government, and you're like, oh, like Republicans want smaller government, but also want to expand government's control over things. Like, what the
Over
fuck?
certain things. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got a
So like,
request. I got a request from
uh
a chatter
yeah.
who wants us to watch a, a video like a are you willing to do that?
What's the video about?
Okay, so I'm told that it's the opening sequence of a Michael Moore documentary, and Myopic has checked it and says vouches that that's what it is.
Oh yeah, like if it's something that's relevant or something that's interesting, like I don't mind.
I mean it's a Michael Moore documentary, so I assume it's at least it's about politics, right? Um,
Maybe.
so
Or like, but like not everything in politics necessarily is relevant to a conversation, but
yeah, and
yeah,
I
I don't
don't know
like
how
I'll give it a shot. I'll
I
give it a
don't
shot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's, I don't know how relevant this is to our conversation, but we'll see.
While you're getting that set up, do you mind streaming it to the VC?
Yes, I'm gonna do exactly that.
All right. And while you're setting it up, I'm gonna fix my bed because I realize my bed is still messy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good enough. All right.
Are
What
you able to
stream?
see that? Okay.
Yep, I believe so.
All right. So this is 6 minutes or whatever. Let me check that we're watching at normal speed and stuff. Yeah. All right. All right. I I sort of feel like it's funny to say like amateurs and professionals alike have called the election, and then it just shows a bunch of like Democratic officials, or I mean, I guess George Clooney technically not a public official, but you know what I mean. It's a bunch of left leaning public figures saying that their own candidate is going to win, but obviously like that happens every presidential election, right? I mean,
Hmm. Um. So Headless says this is probably copyrighted. I think
yeah.
this is like I think at this point we're not really too concerned about that because like I I don't think Twitch has like a like the YouTube copyright strikes, right?
Um, I think they do actually, but the thing is, like, they will sometimes they will mute portions of your video for copyright. Like, there was one video I did where one of the ones I did with Flowtrace where we were reviewing what was it? We were reviewing the presidential debate of like Nixon versus Kennedy, and like
Mm-hmm.
for some reason Twitch muted portions of that video. So I don't, but they would
Mm.
only mute it after the fact, like on the VOD, and like the live show was fine.
Well, like if the VOD is muted, I don't really care. What I care about is if like so when I say copyright strike, not like
Right,
copyright
right, right.
claim, but
I get it.
like
Like where
the
if you get a
like
few of them,
on
then
your yeah on your permanent record, and if you have a few of them, they take your channel away. Like I don't want that. But
um
if it's just like the VOD is gonna be taken down or like muted, like I don't really care.
um I've heard of people getting banned for doing for like showing movies on their stream and stuff, right? Um,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, I do a show every
Well,
week
like,
where
as
I'm
long as we're like as long as we're not just watching it and in silence, but we're like actually discussing it, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And
This
yeah.
is what I normally do every Wednesday, by the way. Like I do a show with Flow Trace every Wednesday, and the two of
Yeah,
us
yeah,
kind of just get together and like we watch videos and do commentary and
yeah.
stuff on it. We're it's a like a political
Yeah,
rhetoric
and
thing.
like even on YouTube, like as long as you're commentating on it and not like showing like whole scenes and stuff,
Yeah,
like
it has to be like
generally speaking, it's okay.
transformative or
Yeah, but
whatever.
like no worries. Like good looking out. Like I'm I'm
Yeah,
appreciative of your worries.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well,
Uh, well, like I think I'll be okay with it until like I get the first one, and then I'll be like super paranoid. Until it happens, I think I'm okay.
okay. Um. Well, whatever. We'll just watch this and see.
Yeah. We are talking about like how everyone before the election results was like super dismissive of like what Trump and like
Yeah,
um
it wasn't
I
everyone though. It was like almost everyone they
well
thought
like
that
the major like major political like commentators like on TV and stuff like that. Like I
yeah,
remember like after
they were doing this to the dismay of both of the campaigns though, right? It's like obviously Trump wants to be perceived as having a chance, but also Clinton's campaign was saying like, "No, you guys, we actually don't have this in the bag. There's a chance we could lose." So, you know what I mean? So like but like both of the campaigns internally
oh
believed
no, I
that.
like yeah, like I'm not talking about like the campaigns because like I didn't really pay attention to like the internal campaign stuff
Mhm.
in 2016 like general election, but like more like the like commentators like if you're on like a late night show and you like basically mention that you think Trump might have a chance at winning, like you'll be laughed at, you know? Like
Yeah, I mean those people were being kind of dumb. I mean
yeah, or like after I think it was after like after one of the Trump scandals. And the
oh yeah, and a
guy
lot
who
of
wrote
people thought like
Hamilton,
there's no way he
um,
could recover from this one,
yeah,
even
like
though it happened 10 times before.
the guy who Lin Manuel Miranda, I
Hmm.
think. Like he did a bit on TV where like he was like rapping about like how bad Trump is, and then he sees like a picture of Trump in the office, and then he bursts into the like the well he's never gonna be president now,
Hmm.
and I'm just like oh boy. I mean I watched it after the fact, but like I'm just like oh
It's
well
just kind of crazy
about
that I
that.
mean, Trump was behind in the polls by only like 3 or 4%, and like that's
Hmm.
enough to that it makes sense to consider him an underdog, but it is not enough for people to be super confident that he's going to lose. I mean, they were just being dumb if they thought he had no chance. But
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we can continue.
okay. Um,
Ow.
apparently there's some like a weird video issue where every time I click away from Discord, it stops showing the video, so I have to keep clicking back and forth. But okay, we'll keep.
It's not
Like,
going to be.
as random as like
It's a decidedly
dice
small
that's like
venue, perhaps the
kind of
smallest
loaded,
one I've ever
not
seen for an
actually
event
loaded,
like
but
this.
kind of loaded.
Things were looking bad.
So how about like, what if we compare it to like a weather forecast or something, right? Like
Yeah,
if they
I
say,
think that's a more like because like when they say like 20% chance of rain, it's not like like 1 out of 5,
no, but it
like
is.
the
I think it is.
uh
I mean,
mm,
randomness is always relative to the information you have at your disposal, right? It's like we're making probabilistic predictions because we don't know what will happen, but
no,
we do know some
but like
like
the outcomes aren't being created by something random. It's your like so on when you're looking at it, like um, you're looking at it in a way where the only way you can look at it because like you're not gonna like poll everybody, right? So like when you're looking at it in such a way where you can't really know all the information. You know,
right. So the
so
outcomes are
like
being
it.
created by something that's hidden. And now,
So
and
like what? No. So like my point is when you're looking at it, you can only look at it as if it were random, but
mhm,
how it's
yeah.
produced is not random.
No, but that's true of like almost everything that we consider random. Like so we could get into a whole thing about quantum mechanics and how like the behavior of every particle in the universe is fundamentally random. But we could go there. But you know, besides that, like any information that's hidden from you is effectively random. Like it you know, whether it's a presidential poll or a die roll or just like I pick a number from 1 to 10 and don't tell you what it is. Like as long as it's information that's hidden from you, then the best you can do is just take you can make inductive arguments and just make your best guess based on like peripheral information. And that's actually the same thing we do for like die rolls, right? Like how do we even know that the you know that rolling a six happens 1 out of 6 times? You know, it's because we have a great deal of experimental evidence that if you take a six-sided symmetric cube and you just like throw it a ton of times, about 1/6 of the time each one of the faces comes up.
Mm.
And I think that this is like very closely analogous to how we do weather forecasts, and it's also very closely analogous to how we do like political predictions. It's because we know a lot of the things that are associated with certain outcomes, and so even if whatever's generating the outcome is hidden from us, a lot of the indicators are not, and so we just look at those indicators that get you know can show us kind of probabilistically like what they usually indicate.
Mm. Maybe. I mean, I'm not like I have a GED in math, okay?
Okay.
Like, like I don't know. Like my thinking is more like it feels wrong,
Oh, what?
or it feels not right.
Okay. What are you able to say why?
But I kind of explained like why I feel it's not
Because you believe there's like a non-random mechanism that's
like in the votes. But when you the pollster or you the predictor are trying to like predict the outcome, like you don't have that information, or like all the you have polls, but you that's like a tiny fraction, right?
uh-huh.
So like when you have um like you have the polls, which is like an indicator, but it's not like you could theoretically you could have chosen like all the people, like everyone you chose was going to vote for Hillary, but
Yeah,
like
and it's very unlikely that something like that is going to happen just as a function of random chance, particularly when you look at
Mhm.
like the number of polls
That's why
that happen.
the larger the poll, the better, right?
Right, but that thing can
Mm.
happen because of systematic polling errors, which is because
Yeah.
like certain types of people are more likely to answer the polls, so you can get like an unrepresentative sample because of things like
Yeah,
that.
like if you like if your polling is done by landline, like you're probably
Hmm.
gonna exclude like a lot of like younger people
Young
who
people,
like,
yeah.
why the fuck would you have a landline,
Yeah,
Because you have
if
a
you're
cell
under
phone. Like
40 or 50, like why would you have a landline exactly?
yeah, but like if you call someone on a landline, get there the like that could be like a bias in the information.
Right, and then
Um,
they have like mathematical techniques to try to correct for those biases, and those are like so like somewhat effective, right? Like it's better than not correcting for the bias at all, but it leaves a lot of uncertainty in the outcome.
Wait, hold on. Myopic just said I spread misinformation. So I'm just curious as to what about that was misinformation because I didn't claim anything.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I'm not sure I heard you say anything that was misinformation.
Oh, I said what the fuck? A, a a larger poll is better is misinformation.
That is not misinformation. That is true.
I mean, like that's
I mean, like the sample size of the poll is not the only thing that
Here
matters.
he
Like,
is.
oh, hey, myopic. So the sample size is not like deterministically 100% the thing that indicates that it's better. There's other indicators of the quality of a poll, but but like having more people in the poll is better.
That is absolutely not true.
It
Okay.
is. It is true.
Okay.
Wait, Cricket. Let him say his
Yeah,
piece,
go
and
ahead.
then we can just shit on it.
Okay,
Okay.
let's say I have a poll of 50 million people versus a
Hmm.
poll of 1,000 people. Which poll is better?
50 million.
Okay, what if I'm trying to extrapolate how the general election would go, but the 50 million people that I polled were actually in Sweden?
Okay, this is why I was saying that the size of the poll is not the only thing that matters. 50 million people in first of all, there aren't 50 million people in Sweden, but
Let's say there are hypothetically.
okay, 50 million people in Sweden versus 1,000 people who are also in Sweden, then the 50 million people in Sweden is still better, even though they're both like relatively worthless because they're not pulling from the same population that you're trying to measure.
If you have a sample size
Okay, but
and
like myopic, you're kind of going into like absurdism, right?
no, this
Like,
is absolutely not absurd. What matters is how representative the sample is of the
Yeah,
population you're trying to
no, but
extrapolate, not the
sure.
sample
that's
size.
why the size of the poll matters because the more people you have, as long as they're being randomly selected from that population, the more people you have of them, the more representative it's likely to be, and it's just like a
Oh, okay,
statistical
so
fact.
okay, so
That is
myopic. Would you be placated if we said, "I'm sorry, we didn't specify who would be included in the larger poll that would be better"?
okay. So I would agree if you would say that using the same methodology, a larger sample size is better. But other
I don't think
Well,
anyone in chat was thinking that we're saying like, like 1,000 people being polled in America about who's gonna be the next president is gonna be way worse than like 50
50
million
million
people in
Chinese or
Africa.
something. Yeah.
Like,
all right, let me just ask this question and then I'll leave. We can agree that a poll with 1,000 people that has a more representative sampling would be better than a poll of like 1 million people that has a less representative sampling. We agree?
Yeah.
yeah,
Because the whole
if you take
point of getting
random
more
sample.
people is that it results in a more representative sampling. It doesn't have to always. You can do polls in weird ways where that isn't necessarily the case.
Mhm.
Um, but like there are
When we
statistical
say a larger poll is better, we're considering the same criteria of the poll.
like
I
basically what it is there are statistical sampling errors that result from small polls, and you reduce
Hmm.
those errors by having more people in the poll. It doesn't mean that you solve every statistical problem with the poll, but some of them, right? uh
I absolutely disagree with that. I don't think you get a better poll just by sampling more people. That doesn't make it suddenly more
With by
representative.
it, wait,
oh my gosh,
myopic. If
this
if
is
you were to
misinformation.
use the exact same criteria as the smaller poll, but did it with more people, would it be better or worse or the same?
Yeah, that's the question I asked you earlier.
And a larger poll is better.
If you use the exact same methodology, the
Hmm.
larger poll.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it depends if like the methodology was shit. Then
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Well,
larger
no, no, no,
poll
no,
would
no,
be
no,
worse.
no, 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 no.
No, it
If the
does. He's right.
methodology, no, if the methodology was shit, then the bigger poll would still be better because you
No,
would
no, not
still
no. That doesn't follow. Like you could have it.
how.
You could like design a super terrible methodology that makes it so
Mhm.
that the larger poll is actually worse.
By virtue of it being a larger poll, or
Yes,
it,
because it depends on like how it is that you're collecting your samples. Okay, so like for example, like let's say that I design a poll where I want to get a certain outcome for the poll. I just
Mm-hmm.
want to get, as close as I can get to getting like 60% yes and 40% no on whatever question it is
Mm-hmm.
that I'm asking, right? And then my methodology is I go looking for people that are going to be a yes or a no, to whichever one will get me closer to 60%, right? So then the more people I get, the better I'm going to be able to do that, and the closer I'm going to be able to get to actually 60%. But if 60% is the wrong answer to the question, it's unrepresentative of the public, then by
Well, no, no,
succeeding
no,
at
no,
my
because
goal, I'm actually getting farther from the correct answer.
okay, so when we're talking about that, like a larger size would be better to achieving said goal. We're not saying the goal is better or worse. But the
But the
poll, it
thing is,
would be
like, I could
better
have.
for the poll, for the thing that you're working towards.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is like maybe my reason for wanting to have 60% is because I believe that is the correct answer that it represents the population, and I'm just wrong
Sure.
about that belief, and I'm also just like terrible at designing polls or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Like
no, no. But like for the purposes of the poll, it would be better. But the purpose of the poll might be bad.
No, but okay. So it depends which purpose you're talking about, right? Because if my reason for wanting the 60% is that I think
Hmm.
that is more accurate, then you could say the purpose of the poll is to get that right answer.
So the purpose of the poll would be bad, right?
Well, the
Like
poll has there's more than one purpose,
is
right?
kind of
There's like an intermediary purpose, which is to get to 60%, and then I'm using that as an instrumental goal to achieve some further purpose, which is to try to be more
yeah.
accurate.
So
And
like
so then
it's like you're trying to use a poll as like evidence towards something, but the poll is highly inaccurate because
right,
you're not
but
getting a random
that
sample. You're
strategy
getting
is like good for one of those purposes and bad for the other one.
yeah, but like for the purposes of the poll itself, not what the poll will be used for.
Okay, sure, but I don't have to be doing that on purpose, right? You could conceivably have some like terrible methodology where you're just accidentally um getting more people okay, okay, I got one. Let's say I'm gonna go to the beach one day, and I'm gonna take
Hmm.
a political poll, and then I do this like not realizing that people that are at the beach at different times of day are, like maybe the Democrats show up early and the Republicans show up later or something like that, right?
Hmm.
And then I decide like, oh well, I need a really big sample size, so I'm just gonna stay here longer, and then because I stay here longer, I get like this unrepresentative sample with tons of more Republicans or something like that, right?
I mean, like, if you're like, what does the Democratic Party want? And your criteria, like, does not include you asking the poll, like, the people being polled what their party affiliation is. So when the Republicans show up, you just assume that they're
Yeah,
Democrats.
well, I mean, but
Is
remember
that
that this is exactly why Myopic was saying that the methodology of the poll has to be good in the first place in order for this assumption to be safe. And so here I am trying to purposely describe like a bad methodology that would result in the
Oh,
reverse.
okay, okay. I will concede that if you're an idiot, a large poll doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Okay.
I believe that was your point, Myopic. Was it not?
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
essentially,
but like that's kind of like I mean, okay, technically you're right, but like if anyone was polling like that, like they would be probably laughed out of like every circle of academia.
nobody cares about academia. We're talking about getting. Oh, sorry, I have COVID. Getting the information to the general public because it's going to be published in news sites, whether or not it's actually bullshit.
right, and not only that, but there are polling institutions that purposely try to produce certain results, and they're called push polls.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's really important to see who's putting out the poll, right?
So if you have bad methodology, reducing the level of randomness could actually result in a worse outcome that doesn't provide a representative sample of the general
Well,
population.
Yes, this
if
is
you're
right.
trying to get the consensus of the general population and you reduce the randomness, regardless of whether it's getting larger or getting smaller, like the reducing of the randomness is what's making it worse, not the size.
Yeah, but the size would overall reduce the level of randomness from the methodology you're
Yeah.
using.
So if like, I mean, I don't really understand why you would have a poll if you're like only looking for a specific thing. You would just
Propaganda.
ask if someone wanted a like that's more of a petition than a poll, but sure.
No, but there are polls that are like designed to convince people that the public wants XYZ outcome, right? Like there are people
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah. Oh well, I mean,
like there there are
kind
like
of
pro-life
like
organizations that are like we want to show people how pro-life we are, so we're gonna like frame the
yeah,
question in a certain
who
way, and then
like do you support do you support having babies or killing babies? Like, if you frame it that way and someone's like, oh yeah, I guess raising a baby is better than
yeah. So,
killing a baby,
well, so
then
imagine a slightly less exaggerated or slightly less cartoonish version of that poll, and it's what people really do, right?
yeah, and but like people do recognize that, and then you would probably get like a bad rep. Like all it takes is a bad poll to kind of
If
ruin
if you do
your
like a super
reputation, you know?
exaggerated version, and by the way, like a lot of these pollsters do not care about their reputation, but anyway, like if you do like a super exaggerated version of that, then it's true. But like there are also other things like for example, if you ask people whether they are approve of Obamacare, you'll get one result, and then you ask people if they approve of the Affordable Care Act, and you get a different result just because you named it something different. And you could choose
Hmm.
either one of those things depending on the result that you want to see. Like you could do it on purpose, but neither of those is really a dishonest framing of the question, and neither of them is going to ruin your reputation.
I mean, depends on what you mean by dishonest, no? Because like I think if you're framing something in a way that like someone would agree with you rather than like what they would probably want,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that knowingly, I think that's in my view that is still dishonest.
You could use it in a dishonest way, but it's not inherently dishonest just by virtue of saying Obamacare, and it's not inherently dishonest just by virtue of saying the Affordable Care Act. Like both of those terms could be used in a poll in a way
Yeah,
that's
no,
not
no, but like
dishonest, right?
what I said was if you know that people will act a certain way if you change the terminology and you change the terminology based on that, then by definition that would be a motive to
Yeah.
change it.
But however, that would be true no matter which of the two you choose, right? As soon as you're aware
Hmm.
that people respond differently to the two different terms, then there's no way out of that dilemma for you, right?
I mean, you could use both, right?
Yeah, you can, but then each of
Like
the
if you wanted an honest answer, right? So like if what I'm saying is if you know a certain population would have a knee-jerk reaction to the term Obamacare and they would say no to Obamacare, but if you were to say the Affordable Health Care Act, they would recognize it and say yes, we like the Affordable Care Act.
okay,
And you're like,
if the question you're studying is specifically about how people respond to the name,
yeah,
absolutely
like
you would.
if that's the poll, sure, but like if we're like trying to get a poll on like um do we want to repeal Obamacare because it's socialism? But like
Right.
if you were to say, do you want to repeal the Affordable Care Act because it's socialism? People would be like, what? I use it. I'm not a socialist. Like, if you think people think that way, and so you're like, we're gonna go with Obamacare, and because we want to repeal Obamacare or the ACA.
Myopic, you got anything you want to add?
Oh no, I think I've won.
Yeah. So myopic, like, sure. Like again, I'll always give you your technical wins. I don't see how that kind of furthered the conversation.
All right,
So,
so what I'm hearing
so
from you is you're right, but you're also an asshole.
I
I
mean,
I I will say you're half right because I think the way that you framed it was like overly broad, but if I take a narrower interpretation of what you were saying, then it's right.
yeah, like in like an extreme circumstance, then yeah, like if you're like, oh, um, like murder is wrong, and you're like, well, what if blah blah blah? Like, sure, there's gonna be like exemptions to the general like premise of what you're saying, but like if you're like, what should we like? Should we legislate? Like, should we say murder should be decriminalized because in certain circumstances, like,
Well, you can't decriminalize murder because murder is specifically the killing that goes against the law.
yeah, okay, so like
There's another
we'll
definition that says it's
decriminalize
like
homicide
unjustified or
then.
wrongful killing, but
All right, so basically, just my issue is that when you say the words a bigger pole is better,
Hmm.
that comes with a lot of assumptions underlying it.
I mean, yeah, because it's a general, like, it's a broad statement, right? Like, I
it
didn't.
comes with the exact same assumptions that you need to make in order for the poll to have any value in the first place. It doesn't really come
Uh,
with any additional assumptions beyond that.
yeah, but I
Yeah,
think
so like if you had a poll about who's gonna be the next president, like, but like all the people that you polled were in Switzerland, right? Like it doesn't matter the size, right?
yep.
So like,
I think it still does in a way, because Swiss people might still be
Yeah.
able to predict.
well, no, it can correlate, but it's not
Yeah.
going to like you can get to the right answer in the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
Like, like if people in Switzerland are like, well, I think the next president's gonna be like Trump,
Hmm.
and then Trump wins the election. Like they were right, but the poll was kind of meaningless, right?
It's way worse than a poll of Americans, but I actually think it's not meaningless. I think like the opinions of foreign people are still going to be like at least a little bit predictably correlated to the outcome of the vote.
I mean, deep like I would say yeah, yes, depending on like a lot of other circumstances or like because like
So like with some amount of exceptions, right? Like there could be like countries, but there might be like specific populations that where they're
yeah, like for example, a poll of 1,000 Swedish people would probably be worse predictively than like a poll of 1,000 Canadians, right?
I don't necessarily know if that's true. I mean, how educated are the Swedish people?
probably about the same as
Soup.
Canadians, I would think.
Well, I would actually say more than Canadians.
All right, so if they're more educated, they might understand the underlying political processes better than
But
Americans
but
in general.
but the intellectual capacity of Canadians is closer to that of Americans.
I mean, they're probably. I mean, both of those groups are reasonably well educated, and both of them are reasonably likely to be familiar with like American media and culture. Canadians maybe a little more so with the
I would say
familiarity.
Canadians would be a lot more like predictive of Americans than
Well,
Swedish people.
there's also the issue of I don't care what the Canadian people have to say; they can drink their maple syrup somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like
frankly,
they could be predictively right though.
Myopic
I
wants to invade Canada. For anybody who doesn't know, but, yeah.
And that's why I'm terrorizing him with this.
Well, I'd say I'd say it really depends on like how much information about American politics they consume and how well they understand the
Probably
political
more
process.
than Swedish people.
So let's say we go to Japan and
Hmm.
we poll like a thousand people who are like political science majors who also consume American news daily. those people would probably have a more predictive sampling size than even if you ask like the representative population of the United States, who do you think is going to be the next president?
Oh, geez, I don't even know if that's true or not. Like,
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't think so, because the culture is so much more different.
Well, not only that, but political science majors are going to be unrepresentative of the general population.
Yeah, but we aren't trying to figure out who's going to vote. We're trying to figure out who's going to win.
Yeah,
but
I know,
the
but
who wins depends on the general public.
or the portion of the general public that votes.
Yeah, so like prior to the results of the election, like all, like not all, but like most of like the political science people were looking at like all of Trump's like flubs, quote unquote flubs, and like scandals and stuff, and they're like he was kind of neck and neck, but then a whole bunch of scandals came out, and like if you look at like history, a lot of times like a tiny scandal can like tank someone's like presidential run. Like fucking Biden, he like one of his campaigns tanked because he plagiarized a speech. Like, so like if plagiarizing a speech tanked someone's like presidential run, like what would be like the equivalent of a scandal where he's like the candidate was like, yeah, grab him by the pussy, you know?
The
I
thing
think
is, like, Trump probably could do something that would discredit him with the right writ large. But it's I'm not sure what he'd have to do exactly. But I bet you there's something.
he
Well,
would have
yeah,
to
like
perform an abortion live.
like I think like the thing that people always say is like, oh yeah, Trump could shoot a man on Fifth Street and like people would still vote for him, and like I
Trump
think
himself
people
said
would,
that,
yeah, people would still vote for him, but I don't think he would win. I think enough people would be like, yeah, this dude's a murderer.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have to be like fully discredited to lose. He would only have to have been discredited slightly more than he was, and then he would
Yeah,
have
like
lost.
because like both times he like won on like quite a narrow margin, right? Like I mean, like electoral votes aside, like the votes he got to get those electoral votes were pretty narrow, and how he lost to Biden was also pretty narrow. Like it, like a tiny bit more scandalous, I guess. I don't know, and he might have lost the 2016 election.
Sure,
like it.
Yeah.
It kind of just depends on like where people are at, like and who the opposition is. I think like Trump's scandal would have to make him less likable than Hillary Clinton, and to the people who
median
would
voter in a swing state.
Well, to the people who would vote for Trump, right?
Just to whoever's the median voter in a swing state.
Yeah. And like I think for a lot of those people, because like you're probably never gonna get like the people who are like hardcore on one side or the other. Like you're probably not gonna get an alt-righter to like vote for Bernie because Trump said something really, really bad.
I would disagree with that.
I mean, they'd probably vote libertarian before they would vote,
or they would just refuse to vote. Like it depends who you're talking
maybe,
about.
yeah.
Like there's definitely some people that would stay home before they'd vote for the other party.
Or a protest vote or whatever.
I think like an alt-right populist would probably kind of lean towards Bernie.
I kind of think so too. Like not all of them, because it kind of depends.
It depends.
Do they care more about being a populist, or do they care more about being right wing? And then like, if
yeah,
they care more
like
about being a
alt-right,
populist, then sure they might go for Bernie. Yeah,
because like, yeah, you've got the populism thing, but then you also have the alt-right part of the ideology, and like voting for Bernie would go against one of those things. So it depends on like if you're more, like is that more populist or more alt-right.
Well, isn't Bernie like anti-Israel?
No, well,
not really.
He has a really mixed record on that. Yeah,
because anti-Israel is something pretty strong, right? Like you can condemn, you can condemn like
Israel's actions against Palestinian people, but not be anti-Israel, right? Like you don't want the abolishment of like the state of Israel.
He is less anti-Israel than most left-wing Americans are. And I think if I remember right, I think his 2016 campaign there was something to do with like he had a lot of support from Israel or something. I wish I could remember exactly what is the fact that I'm referring to, but
Well, it depends, cause even like Israeli or like Jewish people who are in the U.S., like a lot of them do kind of push back on like what Israel's doing. And
yeah,
so like as long as you're not like let's genocide Israelis or like we need to like push like Israelis out of the area. Like if you're like we don't like what they're doing, like what they're doing is wrong, but like we'll keep them to like a certain like what was it? I forget the year, but like one of the agreements of
I want
like
to
the
say it's like
land agreements.
1967 or something like that.
Something like that. Like you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like they're like kind of go back to those borders and like actually have hard borders, like not just like soft border as it is now.
All right, let me ask you this: would you call this anti-Israel? Say we're voting on reloading their Iron Dome, and then you start crying. Is that anti-Israel?
No,
I think
I
that's
don't think
probably
so.
anti-Israel. What about you, Cricket?
I feel like I don't have enough information to answer that. Like maybe it could be anti-Israel, but I don't think it has to be.
Do you know what the Iron Dome is, right?
Yeah, it's their like
It's like
missile
Israel's
defense
like
system.
defensive capabilities.
Yeah, I'd say if you remember AOC, you know who that is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were basically voting on sending them money so they could reload the Iron Dome, and then AOC started crying about it, and then like literally crying
Sure.
in the Senate, and she voted, I think, abstain. And I think that could be considered an anti-Israel thing because it's a defensive weapon.
Yeah, but like how is America not giving Israel defensive weapons anti-Israel? Anti-Israel.
Maybe because I think it would directly result in Israel getting hit by Hamas's missiles when they fire them off of mountainsides.
Yeah, like let's just say that happens. Like how is not giving them weapons anti-Israel?
Well,
because they've relied on our support for so long.
it in an American context, that's anti-Israel because it's like compared to like the average American opinion, it is.
I'd say leaving a country to get bombed by a bunch of people, I would say that is kind of anti that country. Like
Well,
the fact that we haven't supplied more weapons to Ukraine, I think that's kind of anti-Ukraine.
but overall,
I
you
I
wouldn't say
wouldn't
we
I
have an
wouldn't say
anti-Ukraine policy, though, right?
Yeah, we have a fairly pro-Ukraine policy, but I think they need more weapons.
yeah, so when you have a lack of positive support, that doesn't necessarily mean like the negative, right?
I'd say that would depend on the context of the situation.
Revered Simp says that Myopic has a bad opinion, and he's surprised.
Oh, you're surprised, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, that's because Simp doesn't watch stream normally.
Drone strikes are not defensive. There is no situation in which a drone strike is defensive, whereas the Iron Dome is purely defensive because it's
Oh,
specifically
actually,
designed to take
if
out
you're gonna
missiles.
be so hyper semantic, I'm gonna be so hyper semantic and say yes, it could be.
How so?
If you drone strike like a facility that's just about to strike on you, I would call that defensive.
I would call that offensive defensive.
But it's still defensive.
I think a
It's
preemptive.
proactive defense.
I don't know how much you can really trust when people make statements about how like a preemptive attack. I don't know how much you can trust the underlying information related to that.
Yeah, and that's fair, but it could it be the case that you could defend yourself a little bit better by taking out the offensive capabilities of your enemies.
Okay, let's say they're literally about to press the button and you
Mhm.
drone strike it. You could say that's a defensive attack.
But
Mhm.
you're what if you're being attacked by an army of children?
Well, obviously you kill them.
Well, whether you actually should kill him or not isn't even the question. It's just like, isn't it then defensive?
I mean, we all support abortion here, right?
Yeah, but like I support it because I don't subscribe to the whole soul theory. So when something is a fertilized egg, it's not a person to me.
Solemn, that was what's called a joke.
Well, I'm taking it seriously
All right,
because
but I would call killing all those children. I would call that defensive. If they're coming at you with guns, you got to do something.
well, I find that offensive.
I find it defensive. What now? Do you guys want to finish watching this video?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, there we go.
Wow.
And any further thoughts on that video that you guys want to add?
Not really. I mean, like there's not a whole lot to interact with. Like it's setting up a premise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was done well, I guess. um, I don't know. What do you think?
I was gonna ask, Solemn, do you before we watched the video, you were saying you weren't sure if it was gonna be related to the
Or relevant to?
to the topic that we were discussing before.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a borderline case. Like maybe it's somewhat relevant.
Well, like it's kind of relevant insofar as it is kind of what we're talking about, but like insofar as does it add to the conversation? Is like I don't really think so.
Okay.
Like I mean like if you do like feel free to share your thoughts.
I think it's like tangentially related to
Mm-hmm.
to the idea of like which people form political coalitions with which of their you know
Well,
their
the
countrymen.
video didn't really have anything to do with the what the coalitions were, right?
It didn't get into it very much. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think if the video was about that, it would be like a lot more relevant to like how the fuck did Trump gather together his coalition? Because like libertarians kind of supported him, not really, but kind of like they probably voted for him. Um like evangelicals voted for him because of Pence, but like even like he's 100% not like religious.
Mm-hmm.
Like he literally said 2 Corinthians. So
Which one's that?
what?
Which one's 2 Corinthians?
2 Corinthians. But in the book, like the title of the book, it just says 2 Corinthians, but you read it as 2 Corinthians. Like everyone calls
Oh,
it
okay.
2 Corinthians. But like if you just look at it, like like if you're looking at the verse and then like the like where it is in the Bible, you would just read it as 2 Corinthians if
Yeah,
you
so
weren't
if you
religious.
were like reading it off a cue card or a teleprompter,
Yeah,
you
you
might
would say
very well
2
say
Corinthians.
two Corinthians. Like,
Hey, y'all remember when he did that photo op and he held the Bible up upside down?
Mhm.
yes, I remember.
I mean, like he just like portrays Christian probably because he wants to tap into the Republican Party. Like honestly, like I mean, he wasn't even Republican for most of his life, no. Like he
Right.
was like a mix of Democrat and independent and then like recently joined the Republican Party. So like most of his like quote unquote core values if he has any. I mean, he obviously he does, but like not values in the way we think, but like, you know,
I think
like his core values don't really have much to do with like the Republican Party.
I think Trump's ability to form like political coalitions like almost entirely relied on the fact that you never know if Trump is actually being serious about something. So if he says something you disagree with, you can just go, "Well, he didn't really mean it.
Mm-hmm.
He was just joking, or he was just exaggerating."
I mean, he is tapping into the cafeteria Christian, so like it would make sense that he would portray himself as a cafeteria politician.
It's funny
Cafeteria.
that, there would be people that would say, "I'm not voting for Hillary because I don't trust her. I can't believe what she says." And then the same people would sometimes go like, "Well, yeah, I'm voting for Trump because I don't believe what he says." Like to Myopic's point.
Yeah, like when he
Yeah,
said that when he said that women who do abortion should go to prison.
Hmm.
I
Like I
mean, yeah, like we all know who he's trying to tap into
Yeah,
yeah,
with
but the
well,
that.
the
fact
thing is, like, most pro-life people don't even believe that, but
Yeah.
he was like, just it was just a clumsy attempt to pander to them.
Hmm.
yeah, but the like 60% of Republicans, I think, that would support abortion in some instances, they can just go, well, obviously he doesn't really mean that.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it's hyperbole, right? Like that's kind of the battleground being fought here on Twitch, right? Like is everything someone says like like you got different layers, right? Like is the like if they say something on stream, is it a character? Is it hyperbole? Or are they actually speaking what's on their mind? And
Yeah, yeah,
like you get everyone from like oh no it's just a joke, it's just hyperbole, he doesn't actually believe it, it's all for stream. And then like you get people who are like but he's saying it kind of seriously, so like I understand it can be kind of humorous or like it can be his type of humor, but it people can very easily take it the wrong way and then like be super critical of it, you
yeah.
know.
I think the major difference is like Trump is a Rorschach test, whereas Hillary Clinton was more of a college syllabus.
Well, yeah.
You knew what to expect with her.
Mm-hmm. And like you can kind of imprint whatever you want to believe onto Trump because
Exactly.
yeah.
No, it reminds me of those like there's a lot of video games where the main character is like a blank slate, and
Mm-hmm.
it has very little personalities, to make it easier to identify with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like I think um I mean depending on the kind of game, like if it's a POV game or like uh a visual novel, like I think a blank slate is probably better because then you can make your own choices and you can act in your own personality as the character. Whereas like in your typical like RPGs and stuff, like you are playing a certain character and you're telling a certain story, right?
Well, in like JRPGs, that's typically the case. In Western RPGs, it's
Well,
usually the other way around.
uh, kind of like I guess it depends on like if it's a story driven thing or a narrative driven thing, if that makes sense. I don't know if those are the right terminologies, but it's like if
I
you're telling a specific story, then you're generally speaking not like a blank slate.
Yeah.
But if you have like an overarching narrative, then you can kind of have like a blank character and you can interact with the world as you wish, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like in my experience with RPGs, it's usually the Japanese ones that have like a fixed story and fixed characters and stuff, and then a lot of the Western ones are like Skyrim, that kind of thing, where it's just make your own character and then go run around in the world and
Well,
do it.
kind of like it's the difference between like I don't know what you would call it, but like the difference between like your average RPG and then an open world. Although nowadays your average is kind of leaning more toward into open world.
Hmm.
But like if you have open world, it's a narrative, right? Like you have different stories that you can progress, but if you don't want to progress those stories, you don't have to, right? Whereas in like I guess when I say typical RPG, I'm thinking more like 90s 2000s, maybe 2000, like I think 2010s kind of switched into a more like open world style, but like
Right.
before that, like you had a story that you were telling through the RPG, and your character needed to do certain things and be a certain way in order to progress that story,
But
right?
that's still mostly like a Japanese versus Western dichotomy there, because like the Western RPGs from before that, you would have like Morrowind or you'd have Diablo or things like that, where it's um where the story isn't quite as like rigid as a lot of the like Japanese RPGs.
But is Morrowind Elder Scrolls?
Yeah.
Uh, wouldn't that be open world? Like
It's
I would
open
I
world,
would
but the story of it is not
yeah.
like super linear the way that a lot of JRPGs are, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, likewise with Diablo, likewise with like Baldur's Gate, even, you know, like these games have stories that are kind of built into the world, but they don't like railroad you as hard as
Mm-hmm.
the Japanese ones typically do.
In some ways, yeah, I think I would agree.
I think Fallout would be a perfect example of that, like the original.
Yeah, I
Like
haven't played it, but I
one,
mean, I've
I don't
heard.
know. I think I started with
It is one of the most
3.
open games with like you can pretty much do anything in that game. You can kill anyone you want. You can even you can even kill children in that game. Like they took that out of Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, but you go back to Fallout 1 or 2, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, and that would be an open world game where you don't have a personality, right? You have you,
Yeah,
and
you
you
can
can interact with the world.
yeah, you can even let like the main quest line, you can just completely ignore that, and then eventually like everybody will die or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
like it's not like an end to the game. It's just like that's what you decided to do. That's the story you told.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing in Morrowind.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna get out of here. I just came in here to correct a little bit of that misinformation, Sol. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll let you guys get that back to what you're talking about, and I'll
Although
probably
I don't know why you focused on me when I think like what wasn't didn't you bring it up?
The thing about like larger sample sizes being
Yeah.
better, yes.
So like I don't know why I'm getting shit on this for this, but sure.
Well, I've
Uh,
talked to you more, Solemn, so I know you a little more personally. So when you say misinformation, it affects me a little bit more.
all right, I'm sorry I wasn't hyper specific
Good.
in the conversation.
I'm gonna want a three-page
I would
apology
still
written out.
push back that it was misinformation, but
Me too.
because like we didn't say it's always better or it always like
I think absolutism is implied by saying a larger sample size is better.
No,
not
okay.
really.
I don't think you should take
You
absolutism to be
can
implied by like
assume
almost
it.
any
You can
statement.
assume it, but that doesn't make it true. That's just your opinion, man.
All right, so you're saying if I said more chocolate is better, that doesn't mean that I could literally be covered in a pile of chocolate and that wouldn't be better?
It
Or
probably doesn't because all the
if you have
realistic
more chocolate but it's all inside your lungs, it's not gonna be better,
like the realistic contexts where you would say more chocolate is better are not going to be the same ones where it's not. I don't think.
All right, all right.
Like, have you ever heard the phrase "the more the merrier"?
Yes. The more what though?
Well, the more anything. Like, if you're like, "Hey, can I bring my friends?" and you say, "The more the merrier," but then if you bring like 1,000 people to a house party, like it's not gonna be merrier.
I mean, it might. It
It
depends
might.
on how. Yeah.
Well,
Depends.
I would say no because if to fit 1,000 people into a house, you're probably gonna crush people.
How about the
And
But
more
you're all.
mosquitoes show up at the party and attack people, then the merrier.
Well, you got to think when you
well,
bring
you
a
could be
thousand.
friends with mosquitoes, yeah.
If you pack a house full of people, you might get in the Guinness Books of World Records. So what if like
And you
3 or
also
4?
might get the fire marshal called on you.
Sounds like
Yeah,
a
and
good
so
story.
exactly.
So it could be merrier for the people who weren't there.
And also the people who didn't die.
But yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like if you have a general thing, it's not like absolute like always. Like you can extrapolate from it, but that extrapolation doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It's
Yeah,
just
but you
what
talk
you took from a certain statement.
you're talking about aphorisms now, though. I don't think this is no aphorism.
Well, I'm Asian.
I'm trying to think whether I would agree with that. Like first
Wait,
of all, I'm
what
not
is
sure whether
aphorism?
yeah, it's like phrases that are culturally repeated because they have like it's almost like a proverb or something. It's like that kind of concept.
Yeah, it's one of them colloquialisms.
Yeah, I think I would agree. This is probably that when you say that a larger sample size in a poll is better, that's probably I don't think I would count that as an aphorism, but
No, I
Yeah, I
mean the
think
more the merrier, right?
yeah, but the more the merrier is an yeah, that is an aphorism. Yeah.
No, but like in the context of our conversation, you would assume that you're saying, like given the same criteria, then a larger sample size would probably be better.
all right. I'm getting you guys off track. I'm gonna go take a COVID nap.
All right.
All right.
Rest. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you're still watching stream, rest well, get better.
Yeah, get well soon.
I hope you don't have long COVID, because
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
suck. Yeah, like long COVID is the only reason why I'm like pretty careful about COVID. Because if it was just like, oh, you get sick for like a couple days after getting the like, I mean, I would still get the vaccines and stuff, but like if it's just like, oh yeah, you get sick for a couple days and then then you don't get COVID no more, then I'll be like, yeah, bring on the COVID. Like I'm not gonna die. I want this over with, But like, yeah, long COVID is not something that I'm willing to gamble on, because like I have a friend who did get long COVID, and like she still can't like she used to go jogging, like she can't go jogging as far as she used to because like her
like lung damage or what?
lung capacity, or like basically like I don't exactly know what it is, but like basically she gets short of breath a lot sooner than she used to. So like, because it's like a respiratory, like I mean, COVID's respiratory
Right.
thing, and like it fucked something up, and so like, yeah, I have low stamina as it is. I don't need more lower stamina, you know. But yeah. Okay. Try and get back on topic. What was the topic?
The topic was like political alliances and like who do we work with and who do we not work with.
Yeah, like how do we gain a coalition of differences, I guess.
How do we gain a coalition of differences?
Yeah, because like I mean the simplest or like the easiest way to do it is with a cult of personality, right? So like with someone like Trump. Like they all have one thing in common, and that's Trump. They could have completely different beliefs. They could like they could be latched onto like they could all be latched onto different ideals that Trump has portrayed. And like, so basically they don't even have to agree with each other, but they're still working together because Trump, right?
Yeah.
And so like without like I mean like we don't really like the cult of personality, and like not gonna lie, like just giving it a lot of thought, like I've been tempted to like just be like, you know what, maybe sometimes cult of personality is okay.
I
But like
think
I still want to figure a way to do it without leaning into the cult of personality.
I think the entire idea of representative government is built around cults of personality.
Possibly, because like your representative is the personality that you would build the cult around, right?
Yeah, I mean maybe we only want to call it cult of personality if it goes
When we
to
don't like the
excess.
the other one, like no, like people on like the like if you're a Democrat, you wouldn't call like Obama, like if you supported Obama, to be a cult of personality.
Man, but no, I'm literally that person. I vote Democratic, and I would say that there was a cult of personality around Obama, but
Yeah, but like
I
I
voted for
mean,
him.
as far well, like do you identify yourself as a Democrat?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
But yeah, I get what you mean. Like people will typically say cult of personality. Like one, it has a negative connotation, so
Mm-hmm.
normally they only say it if they don't like it. And two,
Mm-hmm.
it implies that that it's going to like kind of an extreme degree.
Yeah, like you would still like you would vote for something that you think is morally reprehensible if that person were to say we would want to do this, right? Like that's the worry with the cult of personality, right? Cuz like no one cares if there's a cult of personality, but that personality is like the most perfect human being ever and everyone loves it. You
Or
know?
even if they're just a benign average person. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like if there's nothing bad about them and people are like super hardcore about them, like no one would really care.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean they wouldn't care in the same way that they would around like a
Well, like
monarchy.
the cult of personality wouldn't be the issue, right? Like the issue, like if they had an issue, it would be that like you're not voting for the person I like. But if I have no objections to like your politics, like what is there to be upset at? You
I
know?
guess maybe the idea is that no person can be a perfect representative of your politics, and therefore, like anybody, if who has a sufficiently cultish following, isn't that's necessarily going to entail like some I don't know adherence to problematic views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Like cause like I'm just trying to cause like on Twitch and like online, I am loath to include Twitter, but like Twitter, like we talk about politics a lot, but
Mhm.
like I kind of want people to be taking the next step because like I think we've talked politics to death.
Really?
I think so.
Hmm. I don't. But why do you
Like
say that though?
um because we can generally like it's been a while since I've either seen a conversation where somebody talks with someone and like actually engages when they have like a difference of like ideology, like actually engages in like what I would consider good faith. Um and
I hope what you probably mean by that is like only like the kind of at the center of Twitch Paul. Maybe that's what you're talking about, like the bigger,
well
more
like the
popular.
majority of Twitch poll, like if there's like
Because I don't think it's true that that never happens.
well, yeah, like I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but like the majority of like Twitch poll, it doesn't happen. Like I where I see it happening is like the teeny tiny streamers, which I am trying to
Which,
like
hi, that's us.
yeah, like like I mean like again, like I wouldn't necessarily like when I say Twitch politics, I'm don't necessarily think that like every single actor is doing that, but like when the vast majority of like the larger content creators are doing it this way,
Hmm.
um then it like
it kind of starts to go into that like that kind of like overarching narrative type thing, where it's like if you say um like if I were to say go to Twitch poll and look at like a conversation, like what are the chances that they're gonna look at like a smaller creator having like an actual discussion about ideas and not like posturing um for their viewers.
Um, yeah, I suppose that for the most part, I agree with that. That it's
Hmm.
the ones that get the most attention are basically the people who are the most entertaining and who incite the most uh, emotion and reaction from their audience. And
Hmm.
um, there are certain types of engagement with politics that are way more entertaining, more dramatic than others, and it's not the ones that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, like and I wouldn't expect it like this conversation here. I wouldn't expect like 2,000 3,000 people to be watching this conversation, like that's not what it's geared towards. Like it's not supposed to be like super entertaining. It's supposed to be like like an actual conversation, and hopefully people will interact with this conversation. And like if people have some like interesting things to say in chat, like we could maybe talk about that and stuff like that. But like like it's not really a conversation where you like sit back and you're like, oh, this is like
We're
this
not
is
just
super
being as
fun.
spicy as
you know
possible to yeah.
like it's not entertainment. I'll 100% say that. Like
Man, I hope it can be at least a little bit entertaining, but I want it to be like, I mean, that's kind of a secondary thing
well,
as
yeah,
far.
like you have an interesting and very fun conversation,
Hmm.
but like that doesn't necessarily mean it's like for purposes of entertainment, right?
Yeah, like
Like,
I'm definitely I'm not trying to min max my content to make it as entertaining
yeah.
as possible, at least. Like entertainment is part of the mix of what I want to do with my channel, but it's not like
Hmm.
at the center of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think if you have like a healthy mix, I think it would still be okay. Like if like you're streaming 3 or 4 times a week, and
Hmm.
one of those streams every week you go on a blood sports panel. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, you went on a blood sports panel, shame on you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like if it's interesting, if it's fun, then that's fine. But like for the most part, it seems that people will just like hop into like blood sports mode when they're talking with someone else about politics.
Hmm.
Like it's either like blood sports mode if you like disagree, or like super like I want to say a soy, but like if you agree with someone, like then you super agree with that person.
Hmm.
And like
Hmm.
there's no actual discussion of like
Nuance or whatever.
why you disagree, where do you disagree on, and like you don't have to both compromise and like compromise your beliefs or anything, but you at least have to understand why they think the way they think. And
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's really apparent when especially like when like this whole like Roe v. Wade thing happened, right? And
Hmm.
like like not everyone, but like most of the larger creators on the left are like, oh, they just want to like control women's bodies, and then all the ones on the right are like, oh, they just want to kill babies, and like neither of those are true. Like that's your interpretation in your head about why they're doing it, but because you're not having a conversation about why, then like you get those two people on a panel and they'll just be yelling past each other. Like,
Yeah, so I think like another way to put it, it is there's a lot of what happens on Twitch poll is people just presenting their own opinion rather than
mhm,
engaging with differing opinions.
mhm.
And then when you try to put two people together that are supposed to be engaging with differing opinions, what they end up doing is just presenting their own opinion at each other.
Yeah, like what I call they're giving video essays to each other.
Yeah, they're
Like they're not
monologuing, right?
actually talking and like understanding. They're just like, I believe this is what you believe.
And
And so like
or they're like getting outraged at the other person for disagreeing with their opinion or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and then like like just jumping straight onto like the hype, like I guess the hyperbole of why your ideas would be bad or you disagree with those ideas, and like it could be completely different, but like you're not open to listening to the other person,
Hmm.
right? Like I mean, not recently, this is like a couple months ago. I was having a debate in chat with, I forget who, but like I was debating like corporal punishment, like spanking.
Hmm.
And I was saying like spanking overall is bad. It's not really helpful. But there are certain circumstances in which you might not be able to communicate with a child and you want to implant a bad, like a negative emotion to certain dangerous situations. Because like let's just say your kid is like one and is like running around and they don't know the street is dangerous.
Uh-huh.
So if they go
You don't think you could get them to have that negative emotional association just by like scolding them a little bit or whatever?
well, so that's kind of half the like the other half of the argument that we never got to because of what I'm gonna tell you later.
Okay,
But
yeah,
like
go ahead.
I think that scolding a kid would actually be worse in the long run for the
Really?
child. I think because instead of physically like because like the argument against corporal punishment is that you're physically like scarring the child, not like actual scar, but like you're physically doing something and it's gonna scar them mentally.
Yeah, and then you're
Whereas
worried that you're gonna like
scolding a
scar them
child
emotionally by
when they don't understand, like if
uh-huh.
they don't understand you and you're just yelling at them, that's gonna scar them like mentally as well. So like there's not really like you're still harming the child. And I, in my opinion, like I've been both spanked and yelled at because like I kind of got the worst of both worlds because my parents were like they were spankers, but
Hmm.
then like halfway through they kind of went like flipped and they went the more like instead of spanking it was the verbal equivalent of spanking. So like like the whole like giving me lectures and all that shit, and like and personally the verbal stuff like was hurt me way more and like has impacted my life a lot more than the spankings have.
Hmm.
And so to me, I think yeah, I was a bad boy. Sorry, that was chat. And so like I think yeah, like because if you spank your child but still give them love afterward, like they'll still connect with that emotion. Whereas if you're saying like giving them verbal, like essentially verbal abuse, but then also like like be loving on them and stuff like that afterward. Like you're doing the same action, but giving very different like emotions to them, and then
Yeah, I'm
that
not
kind of
sure.
mind fucks.
I don't think you have to be verbally abusive though, right? Like if there's a kid's running toward the road and then you just go like no, and then you grab them and like pull them away from the road. I don't think that's like abusive.
I don't think unless like you do that every single time and there's some sort of negative reaction that the kid has to that action that they're I don't think they're gonna learn that lesson.
Hmm. Well, anyway, you brought up the spanking thing because you were trying to make some point about people not listening to each other in conversations.
Yeah, like and so I was trying to have a debate, and then like there was another guy in the server who was like the who read up on like the studies and all of that, and like so he hopped in and it's just like here's a whole bunch of stuff, read it, if you don't agree then just admit that you want to hit kids. I'm just like,
Uh-huh.
bro, that was not the argument at all. Like,
Uh-huh.
and like, yeah, and that's a whole nother issue.
So he wants to
Uh,
attribute a reason to you instead of letting you say what your own reason is.
yeah, like that, or like it's because like we were arguing it for like so long. I don't necessarily mind that they don't read the full debate because it was a long ass debate. But like just like, oh, he has this position, therefore like this is what he believes, or you know, I mean, like that's the good faith interpretation. The bad faith interpretation would be like he doesn't have any strong arguments and he just wants to like socially shame me from what he doesn't like. Like
Well, no, but it's probably both of those things, right?
kind of, but like if it was the first one,
Mm-hmm.
then like the second one is kind of just piggybacks off of it, right? Like if you want to hit kids, you just have to say that, and like like if it was so apparent
Uh-huh.
to everyone else who was in the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
then like you didn't have to mention, oh, you just want to hit kids, because like everyone would think that, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, and so like what would be the reason to say that?
The reason to say it would be to try to shame you, because like, okay, if it were true that you like secretly want to hit kids
Mm-hmm.
and that you like are too ashamed to admit it or something,
Mm-hmm.
then it would make sense to point it out because it's like a emotional manipulation strategy, basically.
Well, like if I know that, then I've given it thought, and if I was debating or arguing, then I would already be conscious of that and know ways around it, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't know that you've given it that thought.
I mean, if someone's debating it, wouldn't you assume that they've given it some thought?
I wish I could make that assumption about people who have strong
I mean,
opinions
that's
and show
that's
up to
fair.
debate them, but no, I don't think I can like assume that people have put a
I
lot of
mean,
thought into their opinions.
maybe I am slightly more naive and optimistic than you are.
Well,
um,
how has your experience been like having people come onto your stream and debate you and stuff?
I haven't had many random people. So like most of the people I have on is either like if I just turn on stream, it's usually just like Myopic who hops into the VC.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm like I've had conversations with other people, and I think most of the other people that I've brought in, if they have like a strong position on something, they can probably articulate what it is and like probably have a certain pushback if I were to essentialize it into like kind of straw man it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think I've ever had someone on who like was like arguing something for like a couple hours, and then I'm just like, oh, so you're just stupid, and they're like, oh, I never thought about that way before, like.
Yeah, I think calling people stupid is almost never going to be effective, well,
Well, like what I mean by you're just stupid is that like you've never actually thought of where that position comes from and like what's downstream from that position.
Yeah, the thing is though that like even people who push back when they hear you say something might
Mhm.
be like affected by it in ways that aren't immediately obvious.
Yeah, which is why I always push for like you should always push back on bad ideas, but you should never attack someone over those bad ideas. So
Hmm.
like if you like like you could point out that someone has a bad idea and why it's a bad idea, and then just like you can just drop it. Like you don't have to have a concession. But like if that person does have like critical thinking, and if you do have a good point, then like either like they might reach out to you and be like, "Hey, I've thought about this. Can we talk about it some other time?" Or and like especially in private, like if you're on stream and in public, there's a lot more reason uh to not
Like people have their pride
agree
on the
with the other
line.
person and change your opinion.
Right. There's more like performativity to the conversation.
Well, yeah, Headless. I haven't had anyone on who argues in bad faith because generally speaking, I invite people who I've had like positive interactions with before. So I don't have like a whole lot of like random people popping in just yet. um
Same
so
here.
yeah, like I don't invite people who I've seen argue in bad faith or what. So like it has come to my attention that I perhaps have a very high bar when it comes to like bad faith or low bar. I think yeah, low bar when it comes to bad faith. Like to me, if someone is arguing and they're not willing to see like to listen to the other side, like to me that's bad faith.
I was about to ask
Just
you like what even is bad faith because it seems like people don't even mean the same thing when they use the
yeah,
term.
and like a lot of people are like, oh, like bad faith. You have to have like you have to have like intentions behind it. You have to, like it's deceiving the other person, and yeah, to me that is like extreme bad faith. But like, I guess if I'm having a conversation and I don't think the other person is going to actually listen to what I have to say, then like why even have that conversation? Like it's not a conversation, you know?
Mm-hmm. Um,
Uh
the
so
whole
yeah, I
bad
don't
faith thing,
yeah.
it seems
Mhm.
like people weaponize that accusation a lot, on
Yeah,
Twitch
like
debates.
I generally speaking, I don't think I've ever called someone to their face bad faith because that's just like personally I think like debate bro tactic yelling people
Mm-hmm.
like people who are like always accuse someone of like debate bro tactics. It like to me that's kind of an extension of an ad hom to call someone a debate bro and like say they're using uh certain debate bro tactics.
It can be.
Like I think if you point out what they did and the debate tactic that they used, and or just be like, hey, you said this and this and this, and then you went on to say this and this and this, and I feel that that's kind of X debate bro tactic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fine, but like if you're just like, oh, that's an ad hom, oh, that's such and such fallacy, that's a straw man, and don't like point out things, then that's kind of a form of ad hom where you're trying to get someone's ideas discredited, not on the merits of the idea, but of the character of the person.
The
So like
way
you shouldn't listen to this person because they're a debate bro.
the way it a lot of times comes across to me when people say the bad faith thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's like people are trying to it's like if somebody gets frustrated with a conversation, it isn't going the way that they're hoping that it would go, and then bad faith is like their way of blaming it on the other person rather than trying to repair the conversation. And it's like I'm less interested in fixing the problem and more interested in casting blame for the problem.
Yeah, and like to me that kind of shows you're less interested in actually communicating and more interested about winning the social interaction.
Yeah, and I think that that's
And
very, very common, like with in Twitch polls.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like to me I would consider that bad faith. Like you're not trying to communicate, you're trying to win.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like it's fun. Like when like sometimes myopic gets in some moods or like I have another friend who like gets into this like cranky kind of I wouldn't say cranky but like gets into like a debate bro mood, and then like I engage and it's fun because like at the end of the day I know like we can get frustrated, we can get mad at each other, but at the end of the day like we know we're both coming from a good place, so like like I enjoy those. But if it's like some random stranger that I've never met before and I'm just like in a VC with them and like they end up doing that, like I'll be like, do I want to continue conversing with this person? Probably not, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And like at that point I'll be like, oh sure, you win. Like I'm not the person who like needs to win every social interaction, so like I'm very okay with like if I'm done with something and there's still like trying to win, I'll just be like, okay sure, you win. I don't care about winning or losing because like if we're not communicating then we're both losing, and if you want to drag this on then I'm losing, so by letting you win I win,
Yeah,
because
sort
then
of.
then we move on to something else, or yeah.
So I mostly agree, but there is a problem where if you allow people to walk away from a conversation feeling like they won, they
Mhm.
will a lot of times become more, they'll feel vindicated and become more entrenched in their opinion.
Sure. Yeah, and like I don't think, again, like I haven't really talked to anyone who I like fundamentally disagree with.
Mhm.
So like most of the time it's like kind of like earlier with myopic, like it's like a technicality or like a semantics, and I'm really okay with conceding on those points, like sure, you know.
Mhm.
But if it's like, if there's like a white nationalist being debate broly, I won't be like, oh sure, yes, I agree, we should kill all the minorities. Like, like I don't think I would go that far, but I also don't think I would talk with someone who is a white nationalist willingly, because I'm not equipped for that conversation.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I don't think I could push back in a constructive way, or like a way that betters the discourse. Like if anything, I would be doing a disservice to my side by
So
engaging
this
in
is
that.
like a platforming concern almost that you have.
Um, kind of, but not really. Like I want them to have the conversations with people who can push back properly.
Okay, so you don't want to deplatform that person
I don't
entirely.
want
You just
to
don't want to
talk to
have
them
them.
because I don't think I could represent my side well enough.
You don't think you have the appropriate platform for that person, but you'd want them to be on someone
Well,
else's.
I don't have the appropriate skills and rhetoric and all that shit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, like if it were someone that I knew and they started falling into a rabbit hole, like I would probably talk to them about it. I wouldn't be like, hey, I see you going down this, you should watch so and so and so and so online. Like I'd probably try and talk to them about it. So it is kind of a platforming thing, but it's not like about deplatforming, but about like responsible platforming.
Right, right, right.
So I mean, yeah, like yes, it is a platforming question, but yeah, um, I do want them platformed so that they can be taken down by the proper people.
Do you think there's
I
anyone that should be entirely deplatformed?
I mean, theoretically, yes. I don't know of anyone that I would say it's better that they were deplatformed in the way that we know now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could deplatform someone from the internet, then there's plenty of people I would deplatform from the internet.
And who's that?
Um,
Is this just based on their ideology, that like anybody with a sufficiently bad ideology you would deplatform? Is that
well, someone who's trying to push an ideology
Uh-huh.
that I think is particularly bad.
Mm-hmm.
So like let's just say old Richard Spencer probably. Probably someone like Nick Fuentes.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with the whole platforming thing is that they aren't actually getting deplatformed from the internet. They're just getting deplatformed from like popular media sites. But that doesn't mean that they can't still communicate over the internet.
Yeah,
And there's always a way to pipeline them to their like musty corner of the internet, right?
yeah, I mean, it might inhibit their ability to attract new people to their
Mm-hmm.
audience.
But like the people who find their way, and then there's nobody pushing back on the ideology.
Yeah. For the most part, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
So
so
and I think we need people to be at least pushing back somewhat, because like there's a lot of people who have you seen Stardust's interview with Richard Spencer?
no.
Okay, so like do you know the basic principle behind like the dog whistle?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically they would be dog whistling all day long, and like they never have to say it, but people know what they're talking about,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you have someone who is like not doing that, and then they do a dog whistle, then you can like pull them on it and pull them on it, and then like basically they're gonna have to admit what the dog whistle is for.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
I'm not sure it's true that they'll actually have to.
well, I mean, if they want to, I mean, they kind of do. I mean, they don't have to, but it's gonna look really bad if they don't, and it's
I mean,
gonna
they
look
can just
bad if they
be
do.
really
So,
evasive. Yeah. They can either be
uh,
really evasive, or they can just go on the attack and try to make you look equally bad for not wanting to, I don't know, whatever.
well, yeah. So um, like, I mean, it depends on like, again, like how someone is. So like, me personally, I don't think I could do it, but maybe someone in the future, like sometime in the future, maybe, or like some people even now, like Stardust did a really good job, I think, of like because like she basically studied what his like ideology was,
Mm-hmm.
so she knows like which questions to ask, and when he like he did like because like you would dog whistle and then like pull back a lot, right? Like, maybe it's like, oh, like to give you that like, oh, maybe it's just hyperbole, wink wink, like um and stuff like that. But then like she would either make him say, oh yeah, like that was just hyperbole, I didn't mean it, like explicitly, or kind of pull on his like pull on the thread until like he's like, oh yeah, like maybe like I forget what the actual thing was, but like basically he was like, like the whole like Zionist conspiracy theory where like Jewish people are like ruling the world, and like he kind of like he basically like two steps removed said that like Christianity was like a Jewish plot to like control the Western world. And but like he said it 2 steps removed. So like if you just took a clip of that, like you could be like, well, that's one interpretation, but there's other interpretations, right? And like that's the whole like ambiguity where like bad ideas live, right?
And then I
Because
guess
like if you just outright say a bad idea,
and then
then
I guess like
yeah,
Stardust, you're saying she kind of like asked him more specific
yeah, like
questions and kind of
teased
nailed it
it out and
down.
like kind of like first ask questions, kind of like stopping the escape routes, if that makes sense, and then so that there was only one left. And so he had to either admit, yeah, I didn't mean any of that, or be
Mhm.
like, I don't want to talk about it, and basically admit that it was the bad idea.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I think that's really smart. And I probably wouldn't be able to get there as I am now. So like maybe if I were to continue this, I might. But like at the end of the day, like I never really wanted to be like the guy. I just wanted to be a guy.
What
So like
like you're not trying to be the center of attention? Is that what you mean by that?
yeah, like even like streaming, like I was trying to get Katie to be the streamer, but then she stopped streaming, so I was just like, I guess I gotta do it myself. you know?
I hope we can still get Katie to participate every now and then.
I
She's
like
one of my favorite people to talk to.
yeah, absolutely. Like I've been trying to like tug her onto the show, and like um I I kind of uh like I was having a conversation and like Katie wanted to hop in, and then she ended up streaming, and I was like, I want more of that to happen.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that was the same day that I was there, right? And you were talking to Sen and Katie
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like that was good. And like again, like I don't always agree with her, but like I always find her thought patterns to be like really interesting
Yeah.
and pretty well thought out.
Mhm.
And so like I always like enjoy listening to her, even though like even if she says something that I completely disagree with, like I'm always curious to how she got to that position,
Mhm.
you know? And like I guess to me that's the more important part, cuz like anyone can like come to the quote unquote right position, but if you don't know why that's the right position, then like you probably shouldn't be the one arguing for it.
Yeah,
And so like that's yeah, go ahead.
Katie's also pretty good about actually like listening to the person that
Hmm.
she's conversing with and engaging with their opinion and not just saying her
Yeah,
own.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like I think that that's one of the things that I want to to push, is to like actually have communications to where you can, like if you have a disagreement, how you can figure out where that disagreement lies. Like you could be disagreeing on something, but if you're like have a fundamental disagreement, like take abortion for example, like if you're like, oh, the pro-life people just want to control women, then
Mhm.
like let's just say in the future the Republican Party 100% accepts like trans people, and they're like trans men are men, but trans men are also get pregnant, and trans men can also not have abortions because like the abortion is the issue, not the women, right? I
Mhm.
mean, some people are may have like iffy feelings on like controlling women or whatever, but like for the most part a pro-life person doesn't really care about the gender of who's carrying the baby. It's the killing of the baby that they don't like, right?
Mhm.
And so like if you're just like, oh yeah, like the only reason abortion is an issue is because they want to control women, like that's you're not getting to the reason why they oppose it, and so you're never gonna have an actual like convincing argument against it. You know?
I think there is some truth to the idea that they want to control women's bodies, though, and I think you can tell
Sure.
because of the, like, particularly because they're willing to make exceptions for like rape. Like if
Hmm.
all you cared about was whether the baby died, then you wouldn't want to make an exception for rape, right? But they
Yeah, and some people don't.
some people don't, but that's the
Hmm.
exception. Like most pro-life people are willing to make an exception for rape, and it's the idea is like, well, the woman's not morally culpable for the pregnancy if she was raped, but otherwise she is, and therefore we need to hold her to account, right? Which is
Hmm.
a form of controlling women's bodies.
Yeah, and but like I think if you were to ask a Republican or like a conservative right now if a man should keep his pregnancy, um, I think they might have certain feelings about it.
Are
That aren't pro life.
So the chatter that recommended that video earlier came back, and he wants a reaction to a bill, and he gave me a link, and it's just like 4 pages of text. So
I mean, that's a kind of short bill though.
I think that, I mean, from the bills I've seen, that's probably about
I
medium.
mean,
I mean,
what's
okay, so
what's the bill about?
I'm not
It
actually going to
could be
go through this
interesting. It
whole.
could be interesting.
Yeah. Like I'll read the title, and we can, you know, I don't know if you're like super interested in that, we can say, but the title is a local law to amend the Nassau County Administrative Code in relation to amending the Nassau County Human Rights Law to preclude discrimination against first responders.
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about this term human rights.
Uh-huh.
I would say first world rights.
First world rights. Okay.
Um,
Well, this is
and
a
I
Nassau County human rights law, so of course it's absolutely first world.
well, yeah. So like so here like there's this weird thing where like people in the first world see other humans in the first world and they have certain like expectations for what rights to give those humans in the first world and then they call it human rights. But then like when you look at third world countries, like half of them don't have like most of the quote unquote human rights
Yeah, but I think
that
most
we
of those
have.
first world people would want them to.
Sure, but like it's not a travesty that they don't. If no one has it, right?
Can you explain, like, what do you mean by that?
So, for example, uh, there's this push now for like nationalized healthcare, and the slogan is "Healthcare is a human right."
Uh-huh.
So, if someone in the third world or someone in like living in a small town in the middle of nowhere doesn't have healthcare, are they being deprived of their human rights?
I think those people would say yes. The people who say that healthcare is a human right would say that that person living in the middle of nowhere is being deprived of their right.
I don't think so.
Why
I
do you,
think I think when something is available but not available to some people,
mm-hmm.
then I think they would 100% say it's a deprivation of your rights. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if you're out in, like if they're out in the middle of nowhere and nobody has healthcare, I don't see them being like we need to give like these people out in like this small town out in the middle of nowhere human rights and like
No, I think they do want to do that.
the majority of the people or like some people.
Among the people who say that healthcare is a human right, I think almost all of them would want all humans to have it.
Well, okay, as a principle, yes, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but if nobody in like a third world is getting it, I don't think you're like they would consider it being deprived of human rights, and we should intervene.
Oh well, it's a different thing to say we should intervene. But
Well, if someone's being deprived of human rights, they're being treated like as subhuman.
Yeah, but no, but that is what some people think, that
Then
anybody
then why should we not intervene? Like, I don't necessarily say intervene as military. You could offer like push for like aid to that country, and like go build hospitals and like stuff. But
yeah,
like
well, I mean, I'm
no
not
one
that
does
person,
that.
so I'm not in a position to say like why they think we should not intervene. But I could imagine what some of their answers might be. Like they might say we shouldn't intervene because it should be the job of their government to give them healthcare, and it shouldn't be the job of our government to give people
Yeah,
in
but
other
like if no
countries.
one in that country does have it, because it's a third world, right? Like
Yeah,
if no one in the country gets the healthcare,
yeah.
then they're not being deprived of anything.
Well, I
Is
don't think they are, but I also don't think healthcare is a human right. But for people who do think that, I think that when they
I mean,
say
I think
healthcare is a
healthcare
human,
is a first world right. I
uh,
don't think it's a human right.
yeah,
That, that's
but
that's
for
my pushback on the term of human right versus like first world.
yeah, but for the people who do think that healthcare is a human right, I think those people I think those people do believe that people in the third world are being deprived of their human rights by not having healthcare.
Probably to some extent, but like so like I don't think most of the activists who say healthcare is a human right would be like, like in America a lot of people can't afford it, but like there are ways to afford it. It's hard, but like they can get it, so we should focus on people who don't have it at all.
Well, I
Like
mean, there are
no
people in
one would say
America who
that.
effectively can't get it though, because healthcare is actually just super expensive here.
I mean, technically they can, but their entire financial future would be ruined.
Yeah, I mean, okay, look, here I'll grant you this. Like, if all they cared about was guaranteeing that human right, then it's true that they would prefer to focus on giving it to the people who have the least access.
Mhm.
And that's not typically what they're doing. So it means that they have like other considerations at work when
Yeah,
they're
and
just
if they said healthcare is a first world right, then I would 100% agree, but it has a bad ring to it, right? Like,
yeah, well, yeah.
like you
But
sound,
that
like
I don't think that's even what they mean either, because they also like in the same way that they wouldn't want to intervene in Yemen because people don't have healthcare. That I think they likewise wouldn't want to intervene in a first world country that was not giving people healthcare. Like if the UK just stopped giving people healthcare, I don't think they would say that like, well, now the US has to intervene in the UK to do it.
yeah, and
So I don't think first world right is really what they mean. I think they really mean that all humans should have access to healthcare. That they're basically advocating for a social norm that we should guarantee healthcare to all humans as best as, or that all humans should be guaranteed healthcare by their government or something like that, right?
possibly like I think it's when I think human right,
Mm-hmm.
like when I think of someone's fundamental rights being violated,
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something that some people should be stepping in or like advocating intervention.
Um, yeah. So I would agree that it implies that someone should, but it doesn't imply that we should. That we have to be the ones who do it.
Sure. I mean, like I don't think like if a country doesn't do aid at all and is doing super poorly, like like if a country is super poor, I don't think people in that country would be like, we should give what little we have to like help other countries.
Right.
But if we're already sending like financial aid to other countries,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there should at least be advocacy of turning that aid into like whatever helping whatever right we think is being violated to not be violated.
Yeah, well, I mean, normally, like the way it goes is to try to alleviate extreme poverty or something, or to alleviate some type of famine or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could frame that in terms of human rights. I don't know if people necessarily think about it that way, but they might.
Mm-hmm.
So this bill anyway is about discrimination against police, I guess, like police
Uh-huh.
and firefighters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily gonna like read through the whole thing, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess the idea is protect um like police against discrimination or something.
What kind of discrimination?
Let me see if I can get it. I'll like quickly read over it. Okay. Unlawful discriminatory practices against first responders prohibited. It shall be an unlawful discriminatory practice for any person to harass, menace, assault, or injure an individual due to such individual's status as a first responder, and such unlawful discriminatory practices are hereby prohibited where such first responder is in uniform or is otherwise clearly identified as a first responder. There is an irrebuttable presumption that such harassment, menacing, assault, or injury is motivated by such individual's status as a first responder. Wow, that last sentence is kind of crazy. Did you catch what that was?
Um, so I was trying to figure out why you would make something separate when if I'm not mistaken, most of those other things are already illegal now to like anyone.
Yeah. Except this is saying that like if somebody is in uniform as
Mm-hmm.
like a police officer,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get harassed, menaced, assaulted, or injured, then there should be then the legal system should just assume that that happened because they were in a first responder, and that seems insane.
Well, that kind of already happens, no?
Yeah, but this is saying that there should be an irrebuttable assumption, meaning that like if they go to court over it, like there should just be no question about the. It's like it must have been because they were a first responder that this happened. And
Yeah, but it does it say that like I would have a lot of issues if if you were to say that um that happens and the person who like did the assault is automatically like in the wrong.
um. Well, I mean, don't we assume that people who did an assault are in the wrong? I mean, isn't that the idea of an assault? Or
Okay, if we're talking the legal definition of assault, probably.
I mean,
But like
anyway, the bill doesn't say anything about whether we're assuming that a person who did an assault is in the wrong. It's just saying that like if that assault occurs, or if it's a harass, menace, assault, or injure, like if any of those things happens to a first responder, then it is legally assumed that it must be because they were a first responder, which seems
well,
insane to
I guess
me.
my question would be, does this allow for someone like a first responder to be punished for bad behavior?
I mean, I haven't read anything yet
Like
that answers that
if it's
question.
like any violent interaction, like if you're a first responder and you rock up and you're like a super dick to everyone, and just like, like abusing your power, and someone calls you out on it, and you're like, oh, well, blah 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 blah,
Oh yeah,
right?
like you're menacing me because I'm a first responder, like after I'm being a dick or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like if in that situation they're like, oh yeah, like none of his actions, or like the first responders actions matter because he's a first responder, then I would 100% push back on the bill. I would push back on the bill regardless, because it's kind of redundant in my opinion.
I mean, the
But
text
yeah.
just doesn't answer that question. Well, I think it's not redundant because there would not otherwise be an assumption that that any harassment or assault or whatever against a first responder must have been discriminatory against first responders as a class. Like that is not a legal assumption that otherwise exists. So it's not really redundant.
Yeah, so I really, when it comes to discrimination, I really like the term immutable characteristics.
Uh-huh. I don't, but okay. So maybe we got another disagreement to talk about.
Hmm. I like just shortly, why not?
Um okay. I'm trying to think, like there's a bunch of reasons why not. Okay. So first of all, I think a lot of the things that that we don't want to discriminate against
Mm-hmm.
probably aren't immutable characteristics. Um,
Sure.
Secondly, there's some controversy about what is and what is not an immutable characteristic, and I don't think our protections against discrimination should depend on that. Uh, um, like if we were to discover that you know, contrary to our present day beliefs, something is or is not an immutable characteristic,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure that that should change our outlook on whether or not it should be protected by way of discrimination. And also, I think the kind of like logical pathway to justify the claim that discriminatory practices should should be one to one or close to being one to one with immutable characteristics. I've yet to hear a convincing argument for it.
I just wanted to ask, did you assume that I would exclusively categorize things that should be protected as only immutable characteristics things?
I was gonna ask you whether you meant that or not, because sometimes people do say that, and sometimes they don't.
Like I would say immutable characteristics should be something that categorically you should not be harassed for.
Well, you shouldn't be harassed for any reason, right? For whether it's an immutable characteristic or not.
It depends. It depends. I think
Okay, what does
there
it
there
depend on? What's the positive case for harassment?
um I would say if someone is causing a significant I guess disruption in the community has a right to like socialize them out of the community, even if they technically didn't do anything illegal.
And I guess your exception to that would be like if they're causing a disruption, but it's due to an immutable characteristic, then that you would not want them to. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Okay.
Like there are other things that could be protected that aren't immutable characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing really comes to mind
Okay. How about
necessarily.
like if somebody is fat, like I don't know, and like should people be protected from discrimination for being fat or something like that?
Um, I would say it shouldn't be illegal. I don't think anyone should, because that's like morally, I don't think harassment is good. Like generally speaking, I would say don't harass people.
I
But
mean, we were just saying
if
a
we're
moment
talking
ago.
no, yeah, but if we're talking about a protected class that's legally protected, right?
Uh-huh.
So that means to harass them would be illegal.
Uh-huh. Then fat people
So
should not be a protected
so
class? Is it?
I mean, like, to me there's this like, there's action, there's acceptable, and then there's unacceptable, and then there's kind of like this middle area, gray area, where it's like, I don't necessarily like it, but I don't dislike it enough to punish it.
Uh-huh.
So like harassing a fat person, I don't think someone who says a mean thing to a fat person should necessarily go to jail, but I wouldn't say this is a good thing, we should do this.
Yeah, well,
I would
saying a
still
mean
say
thing
it.
to somebody probably shouldn't send you to
Yeah, but it
jail
also
regardless.
probably shouldn't land you in jail.
Yeah. Okay, so
So if it doesn't like, if it's not illegal, then they're not a protected class. But we can still say that's a bad thing to do. You are an asshole.
are you more of an asshole than if you just said a similarly mean comment to a person who's not fat?
I think you would be like, saying a mean thing would probably make you an asshole. I
Okay,
don't
so
know about the levels. It really depends on like what they said. I guess if they said like, if they said a mean thing to a fat person about them being fat, right? That's what I assume, right? Like, it's not just
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, fat person, you have like a bad haircut. Yeah, like, then yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with them being fat. But yeah, like, if they're like, you're making fun of them for being fat, and you're like, oh, like, I bet stores don't carry clothes in your size or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to like a not fat person and you say, oh, I bet they don't have clothes that fit in your size. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So if you're like, if you're making if you're being mean to someone for something, then like, the hurt is all internal. Like, you could be a fat person and it doesn't really phase you, right? But you could be a fat person and it really hurts you to the point where like you might think of, Robloxing yourself. Like, it's really hard to be like, this is a mean thing, so we should do X, right?
Uh, Yeah, sure, but if you think that there should be like protected classes based on immutable characteristics, then presumably there are some behaviors that are not allowed toward those groups.
Yeah.
Okay, like what is it that you're not allowed to do to protected groups based on immutable characteristics?
Um, I don't know what the full extent of that is. I know one is hiring practices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you
I think
can't
that's right.
hire based on your like immutable characteristics. But like, you definitely do get hired or not based on like if you're fat or not. Like, in some places it shouldn't matter, but in some hiring practices it does matter, right?
How about based on religion? Like, what if somebody just says, "I don't want to hire Muslims" or something?
I think that's fine in some
Really?
cases.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm actually really surprised that was your answer.
Well, like, if you're like hiring someone to do like church services.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way it works in the U.S. is like, there are exceptions for a lot of this immutable characteristic stuff, right?
Mhm.
Normally I'm not allowed
Like,
to.
if you're getting like if you're getting interviewed for like a tech job and they're like, hey, you're not Christian, so we're not gonna hire you. Yeah, that's fucked. That probably shouldn't happen.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. I
like,
mean, the exceptions are mostly due to like.
when something is illegal, I think it should be illegal in like all situations, if that
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
I think
And the only reason you could get like headless, that's absolutely not true. Churches hire from outside outside the church all the time. But they do hire based on religion. So
Okay, so
yeah.
I want to make the case for why discrimination is sometimes okay based on the
Hmm.
situation. Okay, so like for example, we're not normally allowed to hire and fire people based on race, for example, as a
Sure. Yeah.
immutable characteristic.
Hmm.
However, if you're hiring an actor to play like a character that is a certain ethnicity,
Hmm.
then it makes sense that you know, like if I'm a casting director for a movie, and in this movie is a character that's black, then I've pretty much got to hire somebody who is black or looks black.
Sure.
Okay, so then it's not all situations then, right? Where like racial discrimination is prohibited.
Um, kind of, but also. All right, so I think we tacked on hiring practices
Mm-hmm.
because we had an issue with firing practices.
Okay.
So when you have like because I think literally the hiring practices, you literally cannot um pin down the reasons why you did or didn't get hired, right? Like you can see like unless they just say it, right? Like
In rare
you
cases, you can. But then there's another thing you can do, which is you can do class action lawsuits against certain employers if they have
Mhm.
like consistently discriminatory hiring practices. Like if you have a company that's just like never hiring black people, and they have thousands of employees, that then
Mhm.
they can be sued for that.
um can they?
Yeah, yeah, they can.
I mean like do well when I say can they, I mean like do they have like actual grounds?
Yeah, these
Like
type
you
of
can be
lawsuits.
sued for anything, right? Like
No, but these lawsuits do happen, and they sometimes succeed.
mm.
Basically, like if they have enough kind of accumulated evidence of that their hiring practices
Mhm.
are racially discriminatory, then people who get turned down from by that company, if they have that evidence, that then they can then they have standing to sue, based on the idea that their own rejection was racially discriminatory.
Sure. But like if someone were to I guess show up to a whole bunch of like you get a whole bunch of black people to show up to an audition for a white part, and
Uh-huh.
like obviously none of them will get it, right?
Right.
Like would they be able to bring up a class action lawsuit against that?
No, and the reason is because we have exceptions in the law
Mm-hmm.
pertaining to the fact that you can refuse to hire people from protected classes if their protected class is like
If it's
directly
pertinent,
relevant
right?
to their ability to perform the job.
Yeah. I mean, they could do whiteface.
What's that?
I said they could do whiteface.
They, yeah, sure, but I don't think that's defense is going to hold up in court, right? Like,
Yeah. So yeah, like I think in certain circumstances, um, it would be okay. I don't necessarily think that um mm, so like when you have immutable characteristics, like you're basically only going to be like you're generally speaking, your issue is going to be getting hired, right? Like no one's gonna hire you and then like all of a sudden realize you're black and then fire you.
Right. Well, I mean, that's there's a lot of different issues that could go along with
Mm-hmm.
this, though, right? Like for example, there's been companies that have been sued because they don't promote women to like higher managerial positions at the same rate that they promote men.
Sure. Um.
So that's not a hiring thing, like per se, but
Mhm.
it's like a discriminatory labor practice based on a protected class, and therefore there are lawsuits around it.
Yeah, but that's also going to be really hard to prove, right? Unless
Yeah,
like
it is.
cuz like yeah.
It rarely happens, but it does happen.
Yeah, I mean like if you've been like working at a place for like 20 years and like they keep they keep promoting managers out of like people who like joined like the company after you and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that situation it could be, but it also could be the case that like you've not wanted it or you aren't necessarily the best worker or like
Right. The thing is, like, you have to have more evidence than just that, right? Like, it can't
yeah.
just be like, I was passed over a bunch of times and I'm a woman, therefore it's sexism. It's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
But what they could have is they could have like a bunch of evidence of a sexist work culture. That's one thing
Mhm.
they can do. Another thing they can do is they can have like statistical evidence if there's like lots of women that this is happening to, and it's like consistently happening to women in the company and not to men.
Mhm.
Then that's relevant evidence as well.
Yeah. I don't know, like I think like legally speaking protected classes and all that stuff is not super strong in my opinion.
Okay,
Like
so when you said earlier the thing about like the immutable characteristics were important to your outlook on this, like
yeah, like
did you
I'm
mean
talking about
something different?
socially. Yeah, socially speaking.
Socially, like how do you mean that?
Like when you're talking about creating a culture around accepting something or not accepting something. I think immutable characteristics is something that like on its face should probably be accepted.
Okay, so do you want to explain like what is it that you mean when you say immutable characteristics? Because I've gotten different answers from different people when I've asked this before.
Something that's inherent to you that you didn't opt into.
Something that's inherent to you that you didn't opt into.
Yeah, so like I like for example, someone's culture I don't think is an immutable characteristic. Even though that's all you know, right?
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you could move to another country and
Well, no,
your
but it's a
culture can
different
change.
thing. It's a different thing to say that you can opt out of it versus you didn't opt into it.
Yeah. So
Right. So
I'm trying to say even if you didn't opt into it, you can opt out of it. So it's not immutable.
okay. So then, because the way you said the definition before was like something that you didn't opt into. But if it's something that you so, okay.
Well, like it has to be all of them, right?
So it has to be both that you didn't opt into it and that you can't opt out of it. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so like let's just say this is probably going to be a bad example cuz you can't really like when you see it on its face, you don't know it.
But like, let's just say someone for shits and giggles cuts off their leg,
Right.
and you know that they cut off their leg because they wanted to cut off their leg, and then they started pulling like the handicapped like pity card to
Right.
you.
So they've got
Then
a
you would be
status
like,
that
"Fuck you,"
they've got
you
a
know?
status that they did opt into, but now they
Yeah,
can't opt out.
yeah.
Okay. And you could say the
So,
same thing
but
about like
if
a
I saw
felon,
someone
right?
without a leg walking down the street, I wouldn't be like, "Yeah, I bet you cut your own leg off, did you?" You know. But like, let's just say you knew that. Like, then you wouldn't grant that person that protected class in like personally, right?
Like okay, if I guess if you know that they just did it just for like no
Yeah,
good
like
reason,
maybe you were there.
man, like what if somebody had
Yeah, crazy situation. But like because that's why I'm trying to show. If you opt into something that you can't opt out of, like
okay,
you
but
still
what if
you
what
wouldn't
if
be considered like a protected class to those who knew you opted into it.
so what if you like opted into it under duress or something?
Sure, then I would say you didn't. I mean, like same thing as like if you get consent under duress, it's not consent.
Okay, so like suppose somebody was really poor. They grew up in a poor neighborhood, and then they got into like a life of crime.
Yeah.
And they did that like under duress because they were trying to like escape poverty by going into a life of crime, right? So it's like technically they opted into it,
I would still argue that they opted into it.
like even though it's under duress, you would still say they did.
So it really depends on what kind of duress, right? Like if what you mean by duress is like a social pressure. You know,
But yeah, is
I think
poverty not
is
social pressure?
well, yeah, but then like if we go down that route, then we're saying like all poor people committing crimes is not criminal.
Well, no, but that isn't where I was going with it though. It wasn't a
But that's
question
where
of
it goes, though, right? Like if we
no.
acquiesce to that, yes.
Well, okay, this is not the point that I was trying to make about it. Like perhaps somebody could have the opinion that poor people are never guilty of crimes because everything they do is under duress of social pressure or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Where I was trying to go with it was that if we consider an immutable characteristic to be something that you didn't opt into or that you only opted into under duress and you can't now opt out of it, then this means that somebody could like be a criminal, and that's an immutable characteristic by that definition.
I mean, not solely, right? Like that's you're taking a few of the criteria I mentioned, and then like extrapolating that, but like you're missing the other ones.
Okay, sorry. What are the other ones that I'm missing?
So like something that you can't really change about yourself,
Yeah,
right? So
like
like
you
being
can't change
poor,
your criminal
like
record,
yeah.
right?
So if I mean you can.
No. You can
I mean
stop
not
doing crime.
reasonably, but like
No, you can
um
stop doing crimes, but you can't change the fact that you once did crimes, right?
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
so having a criminal record, it may like you could argue having a criminal record is an immutable characteristic, but
uh-huh.
being a criminal is not an
Oh,
immutable
being like a
characteristic.
okay.
Being poor is not an immutable characteristic.
Okay, how about being a pedophile? Is that an immutable characteristic?
I actually don't know. It might be the case that it is.
Okay, and then if it is an immutable characteristic, then would you want people to not be able to discriminate against pedophiles?
I would say if it turns out that that is an immutable characteristic, we shouldn't punish someone for being a pedophile. However, being very specific here,
Uh-huh.
if they actually act on it.
Okay.
then we should punish them to the full extent of the law.
Okay, but my question wasn't about punishment. My question was about, are we allowed to like do employment discrimination against them?
Don't we?
Like, I don't even know. Like, probably.
Like if someone's a pedophile, you probably wouldn't want them to work at a school.
Well, I wouldn't want them to work at a school, but
And
it,
I think we should we should um bar them from working at schools.
okay, so then it is sometimes okay to do employment discrimination against people because of immutable characteristics.
Sometimes, yes.
Okay,
With
okay,
those exceptions that you mentioned earlier.
okay. Yeah. All right. So is this a retraction of the thing that like the law should just be the same at all places and times and situations, or?
Um Depends on if you are saying, do you agree that like there are extreme circumstances in which we would say that the law should not apply, therefore you have misspoken. I would say yes, but I think the general sentiment still stands.
Okay. Oh, I got another one for you. Is Down syndrome an immutable characteristic?
Probably, isn't it?
I would think by most people's definition it is, right? But
I'm like, is there something I don't know about Down syndrome?
yeah. But
If there is, I'm sorry, but like I don't know enough of it, and what I do know, it seems to be an immutable characteristic. Yeah.
okay. Do you think that should be like a protected class, that people with Down syndrome can't be discriminated against?
I think yeah.
Huh, that's interesting, because I think we should be able to discriminate against them
Well, so in what way, right? So like if
in
we're
lots of
saying
ways. Like,
uh
I think if I'm running a company and somebody
mhm,
comes to like apply for a job at my company, I think
mhm.
I should be able to hire them or not hire them based on whether they have Down syndrome. I think I should be able to consider that.
I mean, wouldn't you classify that as more of their ability to do the job in like um as opposed to like other applicants?
Well, here's the problem: is you could make that same argument for any immutable characteristic, right? Like if somebody discriminates against women, well, maybe they just believe that women aren't going to be good at the job.
Well, yeah, and that's like the big issue with like the legal side of this whole like protected class thing, right? Because like where we don't like there's so many things going into all of these things. So like
Right,
when
but
it comes.
like
Mhm.
the argument though that you that your belief about whether that immutable characteristic makes someone unsuitable for the job, that's not that doesn't work as a legal defense. Like, you couldn't say like, yes, it's fine for me to discriminate against women because I just believe that women are stupid or something like that. Like, that would not absolve you of of your legal obligation to not do hiring discrimination against women.
Wait, repeat that. I think I got lost in the middle of it.
Okay, like let's say I own a company and I'm just doing
Hmm.
a bunch of hiring discrimination against women, and then I
Yeah.
get sued for it, and then I go to court, and my defense is like, yes, I'm discriminating against women, but it's
Hmm.
because I genuinely believe women are stupid, and I shouldn't hire them because they're dumb and they won't be good at the job. That would not work as a legal defense for me, right?
Well, saying that they're stupid, it probably wouldn't. But like, let's just say if you're a construction worker, or you own a construction business,
Hmm.
and some women apply to the job, and you dismiss them. But it turns out that those women who did apply were actually pretty competent, and like they bring up a lawsuit. I think you could be like um justified in making that assumption.
Oh yeah, I mean, likewise, I think I could be justified in having that belief about like Down syndrome people, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
so if you run an IT company, and you're like, hey, like the person with Down syndrome is like, hey, I want to join your company. And then you have like and then on the other hand, you have an MIT graduate or something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's discrimination to say, hey, I'm going with the MIT graduate.
Well, okay, but we got to give them equal credentials to see if it really is discrimination, right? It's like,
Oh, okay.
like
So
a Down syndrome
if
person
someone
who's
with Down syndrome, like if someone with Down syndrome and a normal person has the exact same mental capacity, and you're like, I'm not going with the Down syndrome person because they have Down syndrome.
well, I don't know
Then,
if I'm never gonna know if they have equal mental capacity, though, is the problem.
well, if they have the same level of credentials,
Yeah, sure. So I mean, and I
then
think the
you
easiest
do
way to
have
do that
some
is to say that they just both have no credentials.
idea. Well, like I would go the opposite and say that's a lot harder when someone has no credentials. The sky is the limit, right? Sky is the limit, and hell is also the limit. They could both be the two dumbest people in the world. They could be the two smartest people in the world. You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but the fact that somebody has Down syndrome, I think, is relevant information. I can make like a strong guess about which one of them
Sure,
is
and
likely to be smarter.
I think you would be I think you would it would be understandable if you were like a tech company and you're like um in that field and saying, hey, we're going with the other person. I don't know why you would hire a random person. But let's just say if you were to be hiring for like a janitor job and you're like, we're not hiring you because you have Down syndrome. I
Yeah,
think
I think you should
be
be able
pretty
to.
bad.
I think you should be able to do that. I'm not necessarily like saying that it would be a good idea to turn down janitors because they have Down syndrome, but I think if someone did, under the belief that like I would rather have a smarter janitor, I think that they should not be like legally in
Okay,
trouble for doing that.
I think on the flip side though, if you do think that way, do you think that that those kinds of people should be supplied for by the government?
Well, I believe in UBI. Like, I think everybody should be, but like,
No, but to a larger extent, because you're allowing for the cutting off of certain things, right? Due to something that they cannot change about themselves.
uh,
Because no, like, because if this were to be allowed and to be looked on as neutral, right? If you're like, yeah, it makes sense that you wouldn't hire someone with Down syndrome, then why would anyone hire someone with Down syndrome?
some people still
if
might, but
I mean, like, not as a business owner, but more as a social statement, right? Like,
well, I mean, okay. So here's the thing: they might also do it because of nepotism. Like they just have like
sure,
like this is my friend's kid, and so I'm gonna hire him or something like that. Right?
yes, and so if they can find a job, then that's great. If they can't find a job, like, how should they proceed?
Yeah, so I mean, your question was about like should they receive some kind of like government benefits, but by
Yeah.
like as a disabled person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably yes. I think so.
Because like if you were to say, hey, we're gonna give every Down syndrome person who isn't hired like maybe a little bit more than like minimum wage worth of money every month,
Yeah,
then I would be like, sure, that's fine. I don't care. As long as you're compensating them for the lack, sure.
yeah.
Like that's the whole point of like anti-discrimination, right? Like it's because the government doesn't want to uh provide the lack that's being created with the discrimination, right?
I don't think that's the point of being against discrimination, but
I mean, like, at least to me, that is.
I mean, I guess
If
that's an advantage of being against discrimination, but
well, like strictly in the hiring and the firing process, like socially is something completely different. Like you can't government benefits away like social discrimination. Like that's not how
yeah,
that works.
if
But
government benefits, if anything, might make it worse because there's a stigma around it.
yeah, so like if you have so like a class that you're like we don't we understand why bosses wouldn't want them in the workplace over like say a regular person,
Yeah.
um and we want to allow for them to make that choice, then we're also going to provide for the people being left behind by that.
Yeah. So it's essentially like a disability
Yeah,
type of situation.
like if you want to like again strictly the hiring and firing process, if
Yeah.
you want to
I don't even know if Down syndrome people already get treated as as like disabled and get extra payments for. I should just look this up actually, like while we're here.
I mean maybe but yeah, I mean if they're getting a fair amount, like I would say probably more than minimum wage. I don't know what it is in Japan for disability, but I know you get like a little bit of unemployment.
Okay,
But that
in the U.S. they get Social Security. I just looked it up. Yeah.
is it how does Social Security work in America? The
They
TLDR.
just send you a check every month,
Okay,
basically.
okay. Cause in Japan, I mean in Japan it's kind of weird. So you have like a very base plan of like Social Security, and then you also pay into Social Security, and you get like that extra benefit on top of that.
Yeah, that's actually the same in the U.S.
Okay,
as
okay.
well. Yeah.
So if you had a good career, you have a good, I guess the whatever the equivalent in Japan is of a 401k. Like you could retire pretty cushy. But like
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
But
Then
also
yeah.
like just disabled people can get Social Security or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And like if it's a decent amount, like at the very least I would say equivalent to minimum wage. Like what reasonably you would get.
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, I would say that's maybe like probably okay. I don't like it, but like would probably be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I also, I would hope that people with Down syndrome, if they want to have a job, should be able to get a job. Like, I would hope that there would
Mhm.
be enough people who don't discriminate against them to where they can get a job. I just don't think
Yeah.
that it should be like, the, you know, that I don't think people should be getting in legal trouble for refusing to hire someone because of Down syndrome.
Yeah. And I think if there's like if it's a question about job performance, I don't think there's like um I don't think that gets hit with equal protections, no.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Okay, so then I think we've pretty much gone
So
through
so
like why I think immutable
well
characteristics are not a good indicator of like of when people should and shouldn't be able to
well no
discriminate,
but
right?
but like we're talking about like hiring and firing. I'm talking about like
Hmm.
social interactions. So like if you had a friend and you're like, "Hey, I don't want to be you're cool and everything, but I don't want to be friends with you because you're black."
Uh-huh.
Like or like I don't want to be friends with you because of X immutable characteristics. Like I
Uh-huh.
think that's kind of shitty. I mean, it happens. You just don't say it, but like I don't like it. And well, if you're being harassed for it, it's kind of obvious, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I can definitely think of a lot of situations where I would agree that it's just like shitty to generally to just say like I
Mhm.
refuse to be friends with black people or whatever. But I'm not sure I want to say that about every immutable characteristic, right? Like suppose I just don't like Down syndrome people, and I think that like I can't get along with them for whatever reason. Like, is that
Yeah, or like maybe you don't have the patience to hang out with someone with a mental disability or whatever. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
schizophrenic or autistic
sure,
or
like,
whatever
um,
characteristic you.
again, like this is social. Like, there's no like you did X, therefore X, but like people around you do look at you differently.
Yeah, but like I guess
Like
this is why I'm saying.
regardless of whether you think it's right or wrong, right?
But the thing is, like, I don't think that's actually bad though. It's if I want to not be friends with somebody because they're schizophrenic,
Hmm.
um, I'm not sure that I'm doing anything wrong there, and so that this is like why I don't want to say that, like, that it's necessarily bad to discriminate against people socially based on immutable
Like
characteristics.
I would say it depends on your interaction, right? So like if I were to say, "Hey,
Yeah,
I don't like to hang out with people with schizophrenia because like I just don't have the patience to deal with it." And you take yourself out of the situation. I think that's totally fine. If you're like, "Hey, I don't like hanging out with people with schizophrenia because I can't deal with it." Therefore, nobody in our friend group can invite a schizophrenic person to any events that we do. I think that's very different.
yeah, I agree that is different, but it's just
So like
not.
if you're the one taking yourself out of the picture, I think you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like you could be completely racist, but if all you did was like go home when you saw black people, like I mean, sure.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that's like.
when it's when your feelings limit other people that kind of crosses the line.
Well, they do though. If what I'm doing is going home every time I see a black person, like, okay, let's say, what if I had like a racial dating preference and I'll only date people from certain ethnicities? That then it does, limit the pool of potential partners for people from
Hmm.
those ethnicities, right? And particularly if lots of people have racial dating preferences, as apparently they do,
Sure, but unless you're having an orgy, it doesn't make a difference, right?
No, I don't agree that it doesn't make a difference.
Why not?
Um, why not?
Wait, should you be required to have an equality in your dating pool?
No, no, I don't think that I can be required to. Like, there's no way that you could enforce a thing
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's your life, right?
I mean, that's one reason. I mean, like, another reason is because trying to enforce that kind of a rule, it just sounds like a nightmare. I, like, how would you even begin to enforce a rule like that? Like a just random individual people getting sued or something? Like, it just seems like.
Well, if you dated someone from a certain ethnicity, you cannot date from the same ethnicity until you made the rounds.
Oh, they have to take turns. Oh man, like, if you had a system like that, you would have people gaming the system so hard. You would have.
You speed dating would be on the rise
Yeah, exactly. No, there would
because you
probably.
could just blow through all of them.
There would be people saying, like, okay, like, I'm a Native American. You can pay me $500 and I'll go on a date with you, so that to meet your quota of dating a Native American, so that you can go back to. you know.
Although I'm probably the wrong one to ask about like dating exclusively with like certain people with immutable characteristics because I do that
Uh-huh.
because I
What?
speak English and I don't speak Japanese very well.
Uh-huh.
So I basically don't want to date a Japanese person that can't speak English, but like feeling that way for many, many years kind of just makes me automatically discount Asian people when it comes to like potential like dating partners.
So you
So I'm
you
just like
mostly
not
end up dating.
romantically attracted to Asian people. So I've only dated white people at this point.
Oh, only ever.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm
But
surprised that.
not because they're white, but because they speak English.
But then it sounds like having done that for a while, you now are more attracted to white people than to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like it is weird because like everyone in I'm in Japan, one of the most homogenous countries in the world. And
Right.
I like all those people are like essentially outside my dating pool.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It's a interesting predicament to be in.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Do you got anything you want to go back to before we're done? Because I feel like I'm kind of running out of gas,
Oh.
but like I want to give you the chance if you.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. And like there were plenty of topics that we touched on that I want to go further, but like we can save that for a different day.
Yeah, we talked about the political alliances thing. We talked about human
Mm-hmm.
rights. We talked about statistics. We talked about like discrimination on immutable characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything coming up?
I don't think I think we've tied up most of the topics that we actually discussed pretty well, I think.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we didn't come to any we didn't come to any like cosmic realizations or nothing, but like
Yeah. I'm so disappointed in us for for not.
we didn't solve the world.
Yeah,
So
man, I
this
really
is this
thought
has
we were
been a
gonna.
disaster.
What a letdown.
I would say like I would maybe want to continue a conversation about like what is a protected class and to what end should it extend to.
Mm-hmm.
But we could probably say that for a different day because like that's stepping into like I mean we did talk about it, but like we're moving. That's like a topic that's like beside the one that we were, which is just talking about like what is a protected class, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like why should immutable characteristics be protected?
Is your position still that they should always or no?
I would say general like as a whole, yes, but like not like when the difference is relevant, I think there are exceptions to be had. So yeah, not as a absolute.
I feel like it's such a hard question because I
Mm-hmm.
don't trust people to decide when the differences are relevant, but
Well,
I think
yeah,
it's true that when the
I
differences
mean
are
it's a
relevant.
moral question, right? And everyone has a different line of morals, even though we can all kind of agree to a loose like ethical frame, right?
uh,
Well, when I say
Anyway,
loose, I mean um
well, you and
we
I can
have
agree to a loose ethical frame. I don't know if everybody.
like countries have laws, right?
Uh-huh.
And whether or not you agree with the law, if you were caught breaking the law, you would be like, yeah, that's kind of fair. You know? Like you might break the law. Like you might live your life as if the law didn't exist, but if you are caught breaking the law, you can't be like, "Judge, I disagree with the law, so it shouldn't apply to me." You
We,
know?
I mean, people do that sometimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. And we do I don't think it should work.
No, I agree. It shouldn't work. Um,
But like I don't think they truly believe it, right? Like they want to get out of jail, sure, but like if it because here's the thing, if you're a criminal,
uh
you don't do it in front of people. If you truly believed in what you were doing, you would do it in front of people.
No, I don't
but
agree that that's true. Like if you recognize that the government is gonna catch you and
Mhm.
punish you for doing it, then you have. I think that's a good enough reason to hide what you're doing, even if you believe that you're in the right.
Maybe in some situation.
Like you're putting yourself in danger if you do the crime out in the open, even if you believe that the crime is a good thing to do.
But like you're hiding it because you understand that society doesn't subscribe to that, right?
Yeah, you're
Like if you thought society would have your back,
yeah,
would you?
exactly. So you could think that society is wrong, but also say that, like, well, because society has the attitudes that it has, that therefore I have occasion to hide the thing that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Sure. But like I also think that if you're to the point where you're just like outside of society as a whole, like I don't want to say something's wrong, but like something's not right.
Well, I would agree that something's wrong, but it could be that something's wrong with the person doing it, or it could be that something's wrong with the society.
Um,
It could be either, or both.
Maybe because like I 100% agree that like because society says so doesn't make it right.
Okay,
But
so we can go to an example of like North
Mhm,
Korean people who they have like super restrictive laws that
mhm,
that there's like certain, like, for example, they're not even allowed to have like Western media. They can't even like watch
mhm,
Western TV shows and stuff.
yeah.
And so there's like a black market for that stuff, and they like smuggle in Western TV shows and that kind of thing,
Mhm,
right? And so what they if they're like hiding that stuff, I think they
mhm.
have good reason to hide that stuff, even if they aren't really doing anything morally wrong.
Um, sure. Uh, I would say it depends on your view of morality.
But yeah, I mean, like, to some extent, yes, but I think like very few people are actually going to disagree with that.
Sure, like I would say you don't think you're doing anything wrong if you bought like a bootleg thing and you're watching it, even if you think um like it's illegal.
Yeah, and I
Like
think it would be hard to find people who do think that they're doing it, that's something. I mean, maybe in North Korea, there's probably people who think that that's wrong, but like,
well, like again, like it depends on what you're looking at, right? So like let's just take like weed in
mhm,
the US, for example, in a state that hasn't legalized it.
right.
You can argue that you're doing it yourself. You're not involving anyone else in it, and you don't think it's wrong. So like you don't think you're morally doing anything wrong,
Hmm.
but like someone else who might also think that maybe drugs aren't necessarily immoral, but you chose to break the law, and breaking the law is immoral.
Hmm.
So like the action of smoking weed, while the action itself isn't immoral, the action is immoral. How to explain?
But like,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think I do. Just there's some
Like
people
you
that
doing it while it's illegal is immoral,
like
but
some
like
people
the
would
thing
say
you're
that
actually doing is not necessarily immoral.
yeah, so some people would say that just following the law is a moral obligation, no matter what the law
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
like kind of like illegal immigration or like undocumented immigration.
hmm
Like they're like, oh yeah, doing like sneaking across the border itself is not okay. So therefore, you know, they are criminals and they should be treat it as such. Whereas
Yeah,
like
well, I
most
mean, the people who
most
say
other
that kind of
people
thing.
would be like most other people would be like, yeah, but like they didn't like, like murder or rob or like
I think the people who say that kind of thing, though, are also the same kind of people who would believe that they are doing something wrong by crossing the border.
Mhm.
Like those are the
Yeah.
kind of people who would
Yeah.
also support anti-immigration
And
laws.
like I still feel that they do kind of have a point. Like I would say cuz like there's people who are like uh if like if weed is legalized, then everyone's like everyone who's in jail for weed should be freed, and they're like all um like all criminal records uh pertaining to weed should be expunged. And like to some degree I agree, but also to some degree I'm like also not in agreement,
So you think like
like they chose to commit a crime. And while I agree that the action itself isn't a bad thing, like choosing to commit a crime because you don't agree with the law is indicative of like um future actions.
oh yeah, I agree that people who break one law are indicating something about their personality
Mhm.
such that
And
they
like
expect the
that's
future to be
coming from someone who like growing up I grew up like strictly Christian, and we had a whole bunch of like our own rules, and like I made it a point to break almost all of them that I could because like fuck these rules, so like I totally understand that sentiment, but
uh
like at the same time I wouldn't be like I wouldn't trust me to like follow rules that I don't agree with, because indicative of future actions, right?
mhm.
Like if I think there is absolutely no reason for this law and I wouldn't be punished for breaking it, then I would probably break it. And that's probably something that like, uh well, I haven't actually said what I did, so come at me, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's okay.
uh
I think I'm gonna call it a night. But thanks for hanging out. It's always
yeah,
good talking with you.
absolutely. Uh we can figure something out. If we want to chat some more later.
All right, all right. See ya.